And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore podcast where we never sit out. I'm your host, Matthew Dawson. Joining me today for another conference preview is none other than Chris C to the D Dawson. What is going on? What is going on?
Just excited for college football. Excited to talk Big 12 football today. This is a crazy conference. I'm sure you Big 12 fans know this. If you're not familiar with the Big 12, get familiar. It is such a fun conference to watch. We're going to be going down breakdown of every team, and then at the end of stay tuned. We're going to be giving out our conference predictions for awards, and then also like conference championship, conference winner, and then also dark horses you need to be watching out for. So yeah,
Yep.
cannot
And
wait.
it's key to note also as well over these next couple of days, we will be launching cut-ups of these teams. They won't release all at the same time, but if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that your team will be out in its own cut-up. So if you don't want to watch this whole thing, you can head over to that video. If you like it, hopefully we don't dog on your team and maybe give it a thumbs up, or check us out on Spotify as well. We will not have the cut-ups on Spotify, but those will only be on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for checking in. You ready to get going, CD?
Let's do it.
Oh yeah. All right. Here we are. Let's talk about Baylor. This
Let's
is an
do it.
interesting this is an interesting team because I think the expectations were a lot higher last year. Um and I think, like a bowl game is the expectation. Now, a couple years ago, Dave Aranda's done a fantastic job with this program. There's no doubt about that. He's
Absolutely.
one of the better coaches in college football. Based on like what he does with the talent that he has. But what are your thoughts on this team going into 2023?
So, like you said last year, they were very disappointing, right? 6-7. They finished on a 4-game losing streak, including that bowl game. Uh, Lost some brutally close games, to BYU, West Virginia, and even TCU. Should not have lost those games. Now BYU comes in as a conference foe, and they actually don't have to play them this year, which is, I guess, good for Baylor. But I'm expecting this team to get better, right? The over under of 7 wins. I'm gonna take the over, right? Because this is a play for me. I believe in.
Whoa,
Yep,
right off the bat.
I know. I believe in Dave Aranda. I think 7 is a very good push line, and I think the upside there is for 8 to 9, even 10 wins with this team. I think this is a very talented roster. I think, right, 2 years ago they hit Genie in a bottle, and they were awesome, right? And Dave Aranda, there's a ton of credit for that. Last year they had too high expectations for that team. I think Blake Shapen's a really good quarterback. His footwork's improving, right? His arm is still good. He's learning what throws he can and can't make in terms of when to do it. He put on 15 pounds this offseason, which is awesome. And then even behind him, if he goes down, Sawyer Robinson, you got get that insurance. Staff loves him, right? He's not going to start, but he's a great second option behind him. I love that the transfers they brought in, right? Keytron Jackson from Arkansas is going to be one of their top wide receivers, and the Barrington brothers, or Clark and Campbell Barrington on the offensive line, along with, right, the offensive line coach Jeff Grimes, who's an elite offensive line coach, comes in from BYU, immediately upgrades the floor of that room. And then, they got some transfer on defense, at linebacker, even a defensive line. So I think this is a really interesting team. I'm gonna take the over.
Interesting, because look, I, I do like your reasoning, and I love Dave Aranda. When I looked at this, I did have a slight lean under to start, which now has shifted to a very neutral because of the status that week 2, right, is our guy over in Utah going to be healthy, right?
Yep.
That's what it kind of like. So I chalked that one up as a loss. I just think like yeah, they disappointed last year. I think they lost a lot of snaps. I know that Jeff Grimes is an offensive line guy, but right, we've seen a lot of turnover on rosters, like at the offensive line. Even if you have a great offensive line coach, it sometimes doesn't work, right? Just ask Mario Cristobal, right? It happens sometimes. Now the
Yep.
benefit of that though is he has already coached / recruited the Barrington brothers or cousins, whatever they are. I don't know what they are actually, but they are related. Fun fact. So I do think there's just too many question marks for me to really send in the over right there. I do think like look, defensively, right? I think in the past, I think they like to run a lot of press man, but they didn't really get to do a whole lot of that last year. So I do like the fact that they added some length at cornerback, maybe some physicality there, especially Dunson at corner. And I like the fact that Bryson Jackson switched over to the star position. But I think Siaki Ika is that's a huge loss. Like that is a
Yeah.
huge loss. If you want to like talk about like why their run defense was as good as it wasn't like that good, right? But it was top 50. I mean, a lot of it had to do with him clogging up holes there. And there's a lot of good rushing attacks in the Big 12 this year, especially on this schedule that I'm looking at right here. Right. I mean, I'm just gonna look at Texas Tech. I'm gonna look at UCF. I'm gonna look at Texas. I'm gonna look at Utah. I'm gonna look at TCU. I'm gonna look at Kansas State. Like, there's a lot of good rushing attacks here. So if they decline it all and Blake Shapen does not take a step forward, then I could see this. I could see this going under. It's not a play for me at all, especially with the status of Cam Rising over there in Utah. But look, I like Jeff Grimes. I love Dave Aranda. I love Dave Aranda. This was a sleeper team for me last year. I did in fact sprinkle them to win the Big 12 last year to a disappointment. But think about it this way though, they had a lot of like really close games that they just couldn't finish. They just couldn't finish those games.
Exactly. And they still won 6 games in the
Yeah,
regular season.
and I think this is a quote unquote more favorable schedule for maybe some of your other Big 12 teams that did not get such a great job, but uh I there's a lot of winnable games on this schedule. So I could see it going over. That's why again, it's not a play for me. But again, all you Baylor fans out there, you need to love Dave Aranda. You need to love him, right? For me, because gosh, that dude's awesome. That dude is awesome. Anything else?
Yeah, so defensively is this is where this is why I'm taking the over. Yes, I
Okay.
believe in Blake Shape, and I think the offense is going to improve for sure. But to be honest, like the defense is where they're going to make their money at. That's where the Big 12 is becoming a defensive conference. Like right, it used to be like those 2010s. It was the high flying spread offenses. Nobody played like a defense. Now physicality, running, and stopping the run and defense is where it's at right now. I think they got a new defense coordinator, right? Matt Powledge, right? Comes over from Oregon, was in Waco, right, for 2021 when they had that really successful year under Dave Aranda. And then I think they just couldn't, like you said, they wanted to play press man and they couldn't do it. Now they've actually had a couple recruiting classes of Dave Aranda. He's had a couple years to develop those guys and defensively develop his scheme, and I think they're ready to play it. And I think they're going to be really, really physical. I think they had an awesome summer camp. This is why I love Dave Aranda. They practiced outside all summer. In Baylor, in Waco, Texas, they practiced outside all summer. I mean, that's awesome. This is gonna be a tough group. Defensive line, am I worried about it? A little bit. Right, they're gonna rely on like a community college guy, and they're gonna rely on some guys that maybe aren't quite ready. All right, on the depth. That's what I'm more worried about. And they did have Jackie Marshall towards ACL. It was a good depth piece for him. So that's tough. They got some good defense. Mike Smith from from Liberty, transfers in at linebacker. He's been awesome. Right, the DBs last year they lost a bunch of them, but they had no depth. This year they gotten a bunch of some transfers that they like, or at least a transfer from Miami that they like, Isaiah Dunson, and they actually have athletes. Right, Bobby Devin is a stud. He's a really, really good athlete. Like Devin Lemire, obviously, we talked about Corey Gordon, a guy they're super, super high on. Is a second-year guy, redshirt last year. I mean, I just think the versatility on the back end, not to mention Bryson Jackson, right? Their seventh-year player that can play anywhere. He's going to play star for him, probably going to blitz. I think the options that Dave Aranda and the staff has on defensive side is gonna help them. Gets me excited.
Yeah, I still have some questions on defense, but that's different than holes, right? Questions are different than holes.
Yeah.
And I do think if Jarrell Boykins hits his ceiling, like that that front seven could look a lot better, right? Like if those transfers fit in there and they work in that front seven, like that could be a dangerous team. So I had not gonna hate you for that pick at
Mm-hmm.
all. Let's talk about BYU. BYU, how about you? What do you think? What's going on here? It's a new team to the Big 12. This is new. This is new.
It's new for them because I mean, at least we saw. I mean, Cincinnati and Houston and UCF at least have been in a conference. Right, BYU's had an independent schedule for a while now, and now like it or hate it, like it's gonna be different for them being in a conference. I don't know how they're gonna adjust. They might like it more. They might dislike it, but to me, I'm not gonna touch this line at all. I think too many questions that I don't know can be answered. I think Keaton Slovis, crazy in year 3. He seems like such a BYU guy. I think he fits there really, really well. They got a running back coming in from Colorado, but yeah, I don't know. Kingsley, Suamatea. I'm sorry if I butchered that. He's a stud. We all know that. We NFL guy. They got another right tackle from Oklahoma State, Caleb Etienne. It's pretty awesome. Their O line's gonna be pretty good, right? They obviously lose their offensive line coach, like we just talked about with Baylor, right?
And Barrington,
Um,
the Barrington
and the
Bros
Barrington brothers or
or
cousins
cousins
or
or whatever they
the
are.
Barringtons. But yeah, the defense is honestly what worries me. I think that D line is not very good. Not gonna hold up from a Big 12 standpoint.
So what do you lean over, lean under? It sounds like you're
I'm
leaning
pushing
under
up.
a little. Oh, you're
Yeah,
pushing.
I'd lean under, but I'm just not gonna touch this line at all.
Yeah, I might be crazy to like lean over a little bit here, but look, I think Jaron Hall is like a good player. I don't know. I look at him like kind of like a loose cannon, and I think Keaton Slow, the coaching staff has had nothing but good things to say about him, right? I mean, they're gonna say
Mhm.
bad things about him. No, probably not. But uh, look, and he likes being there a lot as well. He's talked highly of Aaron Roderick since he's been there. Look, they lose some guys in the offensive line, but look, Sataki brought in what maybe 5 million transfers there, right? All guys, like, well, not all guys, but there are at least 3 or 4 guys there though that they got in as transfers that are kind of ready to go, like that could play at a higher, maybe well now a Power 5 level, right? And now I think their wide receiver room is lacking a little bit. I do think it's big that uh, Cody Epps is back, right? Because I think he left. He was going to leave, and then he came back, which is really nice. And you mentioned Deion Smith from Colorado running back, but I want to talk about Aiden Robbins, guy from
Yeah.
UNLV, guy that I talked about on a running back episode. It's maybe like a sleeper here in the Big 12 as a guy. That dude is ginormous. That dude is huge, right? And look, there's a lot of 3-3-5 defenses out there with maybe some smaller linebacking cores out there that might have a tough time tackling that dude. So I don't know. I mean, Puka Nacua has gone at wide receiver, but I mean, their defense was really like what hurt them last year, quite a bit. But I don't know. I don't know. People are high on Jay Hill, right? The guy that they brought in from at DC. They say really good things about. He's coming from Weber State or Weber State, however you say that. I'm pretty sure it's Weber State. Actually, I learned that pretty recently. They brought Eddie Hecker with them at cornerback. Look, they could be pretty good, and they brought in a lot of transfers on the D line as well. Um, I think 3 of them to be exact. So look, hopefully at least they can boost some depth there. But I I do think that they could be fine. Also, too, like if you look at the schedule, like it's not as daunting as maybe it should be, right? Whereas maybe as it sounds like going to a Power Fives conference, right? You're out of conference, you get Sam Houston State and Southern Utah, right? That's fine. Yeah, you go to Kansas, but the good news is though is you get Cincinnati and at home, and you get ISU at home, right? Those are 2 big games that you get at home. Plus, if you go 2 wins in those out of conference games, maybe you can sneak a win at Kansas. Maybe you go to West Virginia and win another game there, right? So maybe you steal. They stole one last year, or sorry,
Beat Baylor.
yeah, they beat Baylor. Stole one from Baylor last year. Now that was a different team. It was a different team, but I think there's a lot of experience on this team relative to. I know they lost a couple guys, but there's still experience on this team. I just need to see that defense get better, but hopefully Jay Hill can do something and kind of inject some fire in that defense so they can figure it out in this conference now. So it's exciting. This is kind of a cornerstone year for Kalani Sitake over there. It doesn't need to be a home run year, but it'd be nice to make a bowl game his first year in the Big 12, especially because some of those other new teams are kind of on the same page. In terms of like even resources and like recruiting, like even though like a team like Houston or Cincinnati, they should be recruiting at a higher level than BYU. And they are, but it feels like they're not there yet. So I think they need to take advantage of this being in the Big 12 early, right? I think they need to take advantage. So I'm lean over. Plus, you can get it at plus 105, I think. So there's a little bit of value there. But
Yeah, I think if BYU were to make a bowl game, I think that'd be a really successful year for BYU and Kalani Sitke. But we do have to talk about Micah Harper, right? Out for the year. That is a brutal loss on the back end. He was their star safety. To replace him, it's gonna be some young guys, right? You're gonna have Talon Alfrey gonna have to step up, and then Raider Damani is a guy their staff is really, really high on. He's a 4-star guy. He's really, really he was the future of that room, but now he's got to grow up super fast, and he's gonna have to provide right depth in that 2 deep, maybe even get some meaningful snaps there, come Big 12 play. A transfer that I want to talk a highlight though is, and I'm gonna butcher this, right? It's their linebacker that's coming over from Utah State. It's AJ Vong Vong AJ Vong. I'm sorry about that, but he is awesome. He was a guy that a lot of schools wanted kind of late in the cycle. If you were looking for, an FBS like experienced linebacker that's a really good tackler, sound tackler, good in the run game, he was the guy. And a lot of Power Five schools reached out to him. BYU ended up holding on to him, and him and Ben Bywater are going to be a good duo in the middle of that roster. It's up to the D line though. That's going to have to figure it out, like you talked about with all those transfers and raising the floor of that room, being a little bit more
yeah,
physical in the Big 12.
think about Michael Harper though. I want to go back to that. It's so funny though, because like last year they're low key kind of they were kind of held back by injuries. Like there was quite a bit of injuries there. And they decided they were going to flip their entire training staff this year, right? Hey, let's get something new. And yikes, already. But
Uh,
it could just be a fluke thing, right? Maybe this training staff puts in that work and they're able to stay healthy. I don't know that the depth is here necessarily, but they totally raided the transfer portal, right, to kind of get that depth. I think Sataki knows what he's doing in terms of like he needs that kind of depth, right? Especially like in
mm,
recent years, right? Like they've really had deeper O lines than maybe we're used to like a G5 team having, or I guess independent team having, but well, besides Notre Dame, but definitely like I don't know. We'll see. So no play for me, no play for you, but I'm excited to see what they got over there in Provo. Cincinnati. Here it is. Scotty Sats. What do you have for us this year? First year head coach coming over by way of Louisville after our guy Luke Fickle left over to go to Wisconsin. That CD's definitely afraid of as a Minnesota fan. Uh, this is a really interesting team because 2 years ago, I mean, they were in the playoffs as a G5 team. They were in the playoffs, right? And of course, there was always talks that they'd move to Power Five. They finally make the move this year, and of course, they get absolutely decimated because they're the holy grail of G5 coaches leaves, took the golden bullet.
well, not even a elite job. I'm sorry. I just want to rant out there for Cincinnati fans who are frustrated that Luke Fickle turned down the Notre Dame job, basically, and he went for Wisconsin. Okay. He was waiting for, like, the rumor was he was only going to leave for Ohio State, and he left for Wisconsin. I'm sorry. Cincinnati fans, if you're upset, you should be, right? Luke Fickle hung you out to dry. And obviously it was Wisconsin's a step up than Cincinnati, for sure. It absolutely is. Right. The Big Ten money, that's the Big Ten TV money that's going in there is obviously going to be trickled down to Luke Fickle and whoever else he wants it to go to. But yeah, I think this is the worst timing, for Luke Fickle to leave because they are joining the Big 12. I mean, there's a reason why their win totals at 5.5. And to be honest, I'm leaning the under. Like it's not like it's like yeah, it's a tough time to be a Cincinnati fan, especially it's been a rough office. I'm so sorry. It's been a rough off season, right? They brought in a ton of transfers though. Emory Jones, most notably at quarterback, right? He's still in college football, right? For you recruiting fans, you guys know he's was at Florida for a while, was at Arizona State last year. Kind of got screwed by Herm Edwards and staff there. As soon as Scott Satterfield got Cincinnati, he called up Emory Jones and told him to come over here, and he did some nice things at Florida, right? He ran the ball well, but he did not do that at Arizona State. Right? They made him sit in the pocket, and that's not really his forte. But we know Satterfield, right, with Malik Cunningham last year, he likes to run the QB option. He likes to run the ball with his quarterback. And I think Emory Jones is a nice fit for him.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a nice fit. Look, I will salute to the people because, like, of course, before I like really started looking into Cincinnati, saw the line at 4.5. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. If anything under, right? But I tip the cap to you lads and lattices that took them over 4.5 when it was there because I don't think this is as bad of a team as it looks. Yes, a lot of really good talent left. Okay. But there is still talent there, and there's talent at important spots too. And I think fit is also a good key to there too. Scott Satterfield also, he knows how to build a roster, right? He knows how to build a roster. I know Trey Tucker and Tyler Scott are gone at wide receiver. That is a huge loss, right? But Xavier
Those are
Henderson's
big
pretty,
losses.
yeah, there's huge losses, but Xavier Henderson is fine, right? It's not like Emory Jones is going to be whoever's that wide receiver there. It's not like Emory Jones is going to be able to dart him up, anyways, right? Like, look, if Emory Jones is getting out there, and even like if Emory Jones goes down, right? Evan Prater has a very similar skill set to Emory Jones, so this offense is going to be catered to both quarterbacks. So if you took the over at 4.5, say Emory Jones goes down because he's running, he might be a little more susceptible to injury. You're just as likely as getting as much wins probably with Evan Prater there at quarterback, who I'm sorry, Cincinnati fans, that he did not turn out to be the guy that you guys thought he would be. But I'm sorry about that. But look, tight end's not great. It's Cincinnati. They have their Travis Kelce or whatever, but there's no Travis Kelce on your team this year, right? And last year, your defense kind of carried you as well. Ivan Pace is gone. Of course, his brother comes back in. Yeah, he's okay. Maybe wasn't so great last year, but I still believe in him. Secondary, you get a couple transfers in there. Jordan Young from Florida is a notable
Yep.
one. Byron Threats is still there. But the defensive line, when you're moving to a conference like the Big 12, right? It's good to have good defensive line. It really is. And I think that is something that they have right there. And it starts and ends with, I spelled Dante wrong, but Dante, the Don Corleone. He is an absolute monster. Also, I spelled Corleone wrong. Wow. I'm so sorry, Cincinnati fans. That's
That's
so
right. I
bad.
spelled Brian Threats wrong as well. It's Byron. Cincinnati,
Oh,
we let you down. We're worse than
we
Luke
let you
Fickle,
down,
man.
Cincinnati. We let you down. I'm so sorry. You guys deserve better. Um, but yeah, look, I think Scott Satterfield might have done enough, right? Where like if they make a bowl game here, that'd be pretty awesome. If you look at the schedule, right? Eastern Kentucky, that's a win. Miami, Ohio, I think that's a win, right? And some of these games, like Houston is a winnable game. West Virginia is a winnable game. You get UCF at home. You don't have to go to the bounce house. That's huge. And you get Kansas at home, right? Like getting UCF and Kansas at home, I think is a big deal. Whereas like Houston, West Virginia, I think those are games that you could go in there and win, right? I think Provo is a tough place to play. I don't think they can get a win there. Uh, and Iowa State at home. That's another big one to get at home. So they're like the schedule dynamic here, right? I know they get like uh it's not a super early bye, but right after that bye, right? Say they're like 2-3 coming out of that bye. Then they got a stretch where they go right. They get to play ISU at home and Baylor at home, right? If you steal one of those games, then you could really set yourself up to making a bowl game down the stretch. Got to win those games down the stretch, though. Houston, West Virginia, KU, even UCF at home. That's a big stretch, right? But I mean, I've listed 8 games that they could possibly win, right? So I think there's a chance that they could go over. There's too much volatility with this, so of course there's no play for me at all. But uh, yeah, but we'll see. Good luck to you guys, Cincinnati. Good luck. Uh, Look, I'll be rooting for you guys for sure. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, 4.5. Credit to you guys who got that line. That's pretty darn good. Um, lot of moving in and out, changing pieces. That's why I'm scared to take the over there. But I do think like if you're Cincinnati, your goal this year should be to make a bowl game, right? Absolutely. But also to start separating yourself from the bottom half of the Big 12. You have to establish yourself as a legitimate Big 12 team, right? You have to beat BYU. You have to beat Houston, right? Those fellow teams that you're coming in with American, you got to beat those two teams, right? Houston's on the road. That's tough. So is BYU. That's tough too. But you also play West Virginia, right? Another team at the bottom half of um the Big 12, and then also Iowa State, who's also been at the bottom half of the Big 12, and Kansas too. So like all those teams at the bottom half of the Big 12, you have to separate yourself from those teams, and you got to look like a legit contender to be able to go out and recruit right at a high level. Like UCF kind of hit the ground running before they even started, right, with recruiting and all that. So their momentum's kind of carrying over. But Cincinnati, I mean, the potential is there, and Ohio's a great state, right, of recruiting. But this year's got to be the year for them. I think a year they got to capitalize on, right? But I know it's gonna be hard, but you got to have Scott Satterfield needs to put the needs to have faith, or people need to have faith in Scott Satterfield. I'm so sorry, Cincinnati. You guys deserve better than me right now.
Yeah, I'll say Cincinnati fans, I think this is the big number that you guys need to improve this year, that third down percentage. And I think you will, right? Like last year, maybe it was a little bit too reliant on the explosive play, right? With Tyler Scott, Trey Tucker, right? Ben Bryant, mediocre quarterback. He is technically a Power Five quarterback now. Not really, but he
Barely.
technically is, right? But I think like having a more mobile quarterback just allows you to convert some third downs maybe you wouldn't necessarily, and it allows you to keep those drives going that would normally stall out, right? That's what you're hoping for in the upside of Emory Jones and even Evan Breda there. But yeah, that's the big number. If that goes up, if you're a top 40 team on third down, I think that this could be a bull team for sure. Houston, we have liftoff. What are your thoughts? There's a lot going on
Do we
here.
though? Do we have liftoff if you're Houston? I'm sorry for all you Houston fans that clicked on this video and thought we were
Look, I
looking to
love
hear some good
Houston.
stuff about Houston. Houston, I love that school. The potential is there. Absolutely.
All right, okay. We're gonna play this. Houston fans, if you're listening to this, CD, you're gonna deliver the bad news, okay? And I'll do my best to deliver good news. How about that?
Yeah. So stick around for the good news. But for the bad news right now, you lose Clayton Tune, you lose Tank Dell, and you lose Alden McCaskill, right, to Colorado. Those are three devastating losses. Now Alden McCaskill didn't really produce last year, he was hurt, whatever. But he was gonna be the focal point of the offense, trying to replace Tank Dell, who was unguardable and who was your entire offense of the passing game. And then Clayton Tune, who was thrown it to him, was also your leading rusher as well with 500 more on the ground. Tank Dell had 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns. I mean, who's going to replace him? You got Donovan Smith right on the screen from Texas Tech. And then Tony Mathis and some others coming in from Tony Mathis coming in from West Virginia. Stacey Sneed's back for another year. And then Matthew Golden's a guy that they like. And I like him too. Right. If you want to talk about a little bit of good news, Matthew Golden's a good player. Samuel Brown's a good player as well. Steven Johnson comes in from Oklahoma State. Joshua Cobbs from Wyoming. Cobb's kind of had a really nice, camp so far. They're pretty high on him. Jonah Wilson as well, some young guys. Jenkins, some freshmen that they're pretty high on as well. Um, but yeah, the O line is really the tough mark. They're bringing 7 transfers or something like that. Um, Paul Patrick right at left tackle, pretty damn good. But everywhere else,
Patrick Paul. Yeah.
I'm sorry, dyslexia today.
Paul, comma Patrick. There it is.
Yes,
Fixed.
exactly. Jack Freeman, but everyone else they're kind of rebuilding. And so when Dana Holgerson took over, they did not have, big O linemen. And so they've been kind of retooling that and to be able to play in the Power 5 level. They're not deep enough, but they're getting there, right? They're getting there. Maybe not this year, but next year as well. The another bad part I talk about bad news though is the defense. Where last year was supposed to be a step up defensively, and you gave up 32 points a game. I mean, yikes! It ended up pretty bad. You lose your top 5 tacklers and two pass rushers from that. Um, So we'll see. I'm Matthew. If you want to talk about some good news, I'm sure Houston fans would love to hear that right now.
Yeah, good news. Dana Holgerson is Holger gone after this season. That's just what it's gonna be. That is,
Oh,
and Houston, that's good news. That's good news. But no, realistically, like last year, injuries got you on defense a little bit, right? Injuries got you a little bit, right? Derek Parrish, that was brutal. What he had, I mean, he won the seventh round, right? He won the seventh round on like what the Jags. He had like 4 sacks against Texas Tech, like in that one game. Gosh, and then he went down. That was brutal, right? Because like last year they'd returned more sacks on their D line than any other team in the country. That's why everyone was like really high on this defensive line. Derek Parrish goes down. Maybe things don't go their way so much. They're still okay in the run game defensively. That defensive front was fine, right? Maybe it wasn't like as elite as you wanted it, but so D'Anthony Jones is a big loss, but maybe you know David Ogwegbu, he might be a guy that they got in the portal, and he might be a stud. Look, I know Ish Harris got dismissed from the team, but that's good news. As a Texas A&M fan, I'm telling you, Houston fans, that's good news. It'll be okay. The secondary, it was bad last year, but guess what? Dana Holgerson, he knew that. He very much knew that, and he went and got a bunch of guys in the secondary. Some of them who I might be really good. I'm familiar with Brian George, really long and athletic. I definitely had some questions when I would watch him, but I don't know. It was his first year out of JUCO, right? So, well, when he was really getting playing time, right, and then he kind of got benched this past year, right, which led to the transfer. But when he was really getting playing time, it was his first year out of JUCO. He's still pretty raw. So now he's here, redshirt senior,
well,
transferred
and
to his
he doesn't
second
have to
school.
start for him either, right? Alex Hogan comes
No,
back.
no,
Isaiah Hamilton's a good pickup in the offseason. Like they got some guys there as well.
yeah. So and a lot of these guys look, and what's nice too, good news, the schedule dynamic is not so terrible either, right? UTSA getting them at home it's a big deal. You Houston fans know that you would not be favored on a neutral field if well, you're not favored right now, but it would certainly be over a field goal if you guys were playing at UTSA in San Antonio. But Rice, of course, let's not let's not lose to Rice. All right, chew your
Can't lose the
food.
food. Josh Pate, come on now.
Josh Pate, let's chew your food. Okay. Sam Houston State, that can be a win. So right. So if you win 3 of those games, there's a chance you're 3-1 headed into Texas Tech. That's a legit chance. And then eventually, then off the bye, you get West Virginia at home. That's a big game you get at home. Cincinnati, you get at home. Right. So like there's a legit chance, like 4.5, like feels like a pretty low number to a lot of people, I think. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to take that over. Not me. To end on a bad note, I am leaning under. I am leaning on you. I'm sorry. What is it for you?
Yeah, I think 4.5 is actually a great line. To be honest, I lean. I think if they could win 4.5 games, they would. I think they're gonna win somewhere between 4 and 5. No, it's not very insightful of me to say, but yeah, I think if they win a bowl game, if they make a bowl game, I'd be very surprised, and I think Dana Holgerson deserves a ton of credit for that,
That would be
replacing
crazy.
all that they have to replace.
That would be crazy. But look, I'm a huge Houston fan, and I think that they deserve way better than they have, and they should be in a Power Five conference. This is a school that should be in a Power Five conference. You basketball fans, of course, are insanely happy about that, but football fans, you deserve better. I know, and it's gonna come. It's just it might not come this year, but it will
It
come
will.
eventually. But look, Donovan Smith's not terrible. He's played in the Big 12 before, so wow. Well, here it is. Let's talk about Iowa State. Let's get it out of the way. Let's get the
The,
jokes out of the way, right?
the fuck is going on, man? With the
Yeah,
gambling. I mean, what happened? Iowa State was in the Big 12 championship, not too long ago, and now their
I know,
starting
but
quarterback is suspended for the year or whatever. Like, what is that?
well, he's getting criminal charges is what he's getting.
Is it? Oh my
So
god!
yeah, but And then there was also another offensive lineman that they had, a backup that was like tampering with evidence or whatever.
JJ Cole though. JJ Cole.
JJ Cole season. If there's a bright side to all this, it could be that you guys are gonna see your Messiah maybe sooner than people thought. Because that's a guy, that's a dude, that's their true freshman quarterback. So this was a tough analysis for me because one, we're not used to Iowa State having a not so good, well, at least in the last couple of years, we're not used to having them having just an absolute terrible rushing attack. We're not used to it. They were terrible last year, very, very terrible, and that's not a
They missed
secret.
Brees Hall.
Yeah, they missed Brees Hall, missed a couple offensive linemen there. Uh, like okay, look, Brock is gone, he's out of there now. But enter Cartevious Norton. I think Iowa State fans really like him a lot. I'm not going to say he's going to be like super special, but I think a lot of Iowa State fans would argue that he's actually the guy, that he should have been the guy. But also, I think there's another group of Iowa State fans that believe Eli Sanders is also a guy too. So it feels like you guys might be a little bit deeper over there. Okay, look, and I'm not a hater. I'm not a hater. All I'm saying is that the question should be asked, right? Was Xavier Hutchinson that big of a loss? Was he that big of a loss?
He
Right?
had 163 targets, which is a lot. A
That's a lot.
lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
The,
It's a
the only
huge
problem
amount.
is does Xavier Hutchinson, right, with all due respect to Xavier Hutchinson and Iowa State fans, does he deserve 163 targets in a year? No, he does not. But last year, the whole room struggled with drops, right? And so, like, you might as well throw it to Hutchinson because you know at least he's going to catch it, right?
Well, I mean,
Well,
they would they'd be 6-6 if Xavier
I
Hutchinson had
guess, I
caught
guess you're right.
two. There were two drops that Xavier Hutchinson had that led them to being 4-8. Is all I'm gonna say.
I guess you're right. But Jalen Noel is an interesting guy. He's going to come back. His drops are getting better. It seems like he's kind of fixing, his drop problem. Jaden Higgins from Eastern Kentucky seems to be that second role, a number 2 guy, as well as Demetrius Stanley there, who's a senior there as well. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, the good news is, right, like when this originally came out, so the line was actually at 5.5, right? I can actually see a situation where 4.5 is value, right? Because you lose Hunter Deckers, sure. And look, the investigations aren't done. Maybe there's more guys, right? But it doesn't feel like these losses are actually that big if you believe in JJ Cole, right? So like I think there's a large group of people out there that are taking the under at 4.5 that shouldn't be. Like I don't think people should be taking the under at 4.5. In fact, I lean over on this actually. I was leaning over at 5.5. Now the problem is though, it's a really tough schedule. It's a really, really, really tough schedule. You got to go to Ohio and win, right? And that's not an easy game. There's not a great defense over there in the MAC, but they have an elite backfield, right? And if you're not ready to stop that, then it could be tough because they lost Will McDonald, they lost MJ Anderson. So that on the defensive line, but they still have talent there, right? They still have talent there. They've always done a great job there developing guys on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not like super worried about that. The thing is though, is like what's weird to me is that these allegations are coming out and they only brought in like what 4 transfers, 5 transfers, 6 transfers. They didn't bring in a whole lot of transfers. And does that tell you that Matt Campbell actually like believes in this roster? That might. So like there's 2 ways to look at that. You're like, okay, they were not ready or they didn't land their guys. I think Iowa State could have landed some guys. I just don't know that they wanted to, right? And Matt Campbell has said that he's okay with the transfer portal, right? Like Dave Aranda was a guy who wasn't, now he is, right? And Matt Rule was a guy who wasn't, but now he is, right? Like so, like there's guys changing all the time. Dabo in the next coming years was, but now maybe he will be in the next couple of years. Hopefully, Clemson fans are hoping for that, but I just think like 4.5 could it could legitimately be valuable. I'm not going to be taking it, but that there is value there because I do think, yeah, Xavier Hutchinson is a loss. He's a loss. He was a good football player, but I think in the aggregate, like if Jalen Noel can fix his drop issues, I think they're still going to have a pretty decent. And if they can just improve at all on the offensive line, if they can just improve at all and run the ball, like half decently. I mean, like 3 yards per carry. Oh, that's brutal, right? If they can like improve that even a marginal amount, their defense is not going to be as good as it was last year, maybe. Because they also lost what's his name? Anthony Johnson, right? The safety.
Mhm.
They also lost him too, but I still think there's enough talent on this team. Like they could win a bowl or they could go to a bowl game, but that requires them to win. Like they'd have to go maybe to Baylor or Provo and win at one of those places, right? It means winning at Nippert, right, in Cincinnati. So a lot of those like winnable games, you actually find yourself on the road, right, which is really tough. So scheduling dynamic is not in Iowa State's favor at all. But if you're looking at sheer value, it's an interesting. It would be an interesting overtake if someone were to take that. I would not blame someone. Which sounds crazy after everything that's happened. That sounds crazy. Iowa State fans, sounds crazy, but maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, to me, I lean the over very, very much. I don't know if it's quite there yet to make a play. I want to see how the quarterbacks are looking, the next week. It'll be JJ Cole or Rocco Becht. It's probably going to be Becht early, but right, if JJ Cole continues to progress like he has been, it's going to look very tempting. I think I'm going to look back on this year and be upset that I didn't take the over. Right, last year, let's not pretend that Hunter Deckers though is like losing. It's all American quarterback. I mean, they were 110th in offense last year. I mean, was it all his fault? No, but they had a bunch of turnovers, right? So he threw some picks, and I don't know. I think the O line, like you said, the O line is getting better. They bring in a new coach, Ryan Clinton. He's had success where he's been so far. It seems like it was a hit in the spring and continued over into the fall. Right, their two guards, Daryl Simmons and Jared Hufford, seem to be playing really, really good football right now. They got some younger guys that are backing those guys up. That they have depth there now. New coaching and depth is always a good sight for an offensive line room. We talked about the wide receivers already. Defensively, like you said, lose some pieces, but also right, the defensive line's going to be pretty darn good. Tyler Oyadime is pretty damn good. Like he dominated this spring. Jefferson Adams, good player as well. Like was Joey Peterson is pretty good at the edge. He's been surging in spring and fall camp as well. Um, Dominique Orange as well is huge NFL upside. They love him there. He's still a young guy, but he's a big guy, nose tackle there. Um, to be honest, but the defensive back that I want to talk about that I think is really, really cool story is the true freshman preferred walk on, right? Drew Surges. He has been balling in camp, balling in camp. That is really, really awesome. He might start at your star position off out of the gate, if not early, if not in the week one, but pretty damn early in the year. He seems to be awesome. He's a guy I'm absolutely gonna be rooting for. All right, as a preferred walk on to earn a starting job in his first year. He won't be a walk on very long. Um, I think I'm gonna kick myself for not taking the over on this. The reason that I don't is honestly that Iowa game in week two. I think Iowa is just really, really good. I'm really high on them. So it's gonna be hard to win 5 games outside of that. If you're gonna have to lose one and not a conference. But yeah, and their schedule is not super easy in the Big 12 either. Like you talked about, their dynamics of their schedule is not great either. But they might be a much better team, but only win maybe the same amount of games, right, that they did last year, which will be tough for Matt Campbell. I know the Matt Campbell naysayers will love that, but you should be happy you have Matt Campbell at Iowa State, right? He should be long gone by now, but he's still there. He loves it there, and I think he's going to continue to grow this roster. Maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years with JJ Cole and company. It's gonna be a really good team in the Big 12, the new look Big 12. All right.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Iowa State fans, you need to realize how far Matt Campbell's taking y'all. All right. And this was not a 4-8 team last year. How about 117th in turnover margin, which we know if you're an analytics guy, right, is that stuff regresses, right? That stuff
Mm-hmm.
regresses. Like quarterbacks, maybe it doesn't regress so much, depending, but they got a new offensive coordinator in there, so promoted from within, but it's still new. It's new play caller. So I'm just saying, like, if some of that turnover margin switches, they can run the ball. some of these guys on defense still step up the way that they're used to doing it. Uh, it would be crazy, but they could make a bowl game. Kansas, 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 Kansas. Wow, what a story last year. Lance Leipold, everyone was talking about, oh, where's he going? What job does he want? Because he can have it wherever it is. But guess what? He said, like the great Jordan Belfort, I'm not leaving.
I'm leaving.
I'm not leaving. So what a dog that guy is. I love this offense. Uh, I really
Love might even be an understatement, man. Oh my gosh.
It was a top 10
Sorry.
offense last year, and guess what? They had everyone back except, of course, you guys can see on the screen, Earl Bostic, who's their left tackle, who's on the practice squad, I think, for the Cowboys right now, or he will be. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe he makes a roster spot. But yeah, what's up is their defense. It was a huge split right between their offense and defense. It was a bottom 20 defense last year. Um, Spoiler alert, it might be really similar to like it was last year. Uh, the D line was pretty horrendous, and they lost like their top three D tackles last year. It was horrendous, right? So maybe it's addition by subtraction. I don't know, but I don't know that they got some guys in there really that are. There's just not a lot of experience on the defense this year, so there is a little bit of roster turnover, and I don't think that there's a ton of guys either with like super high ceilings. Like there's not a lot of like physical beasts that you're like, oh, he's raw, he just needs the right coaching. It feels like a lot of these guys have hit their ceiling. Which kind of makes the volatility of this team crazy though, because their offense is so crazy. They could just win any game. They could win any of these games that is on their schedule, but they could also lose almost any of these games, right? Yeah. So 6. When was the last time their over under was at 6? That's pretty crazy. So
Yeah.
what are you thinking there?
I want to take the over so bad because I mean with a healthy Jalen Daniels, he can win they can win 7 games on their own. Their schedule is pretty tough. And I think Illinois week 2 might be the most like not high profile, but like one of the most exciting games I'm really looking forward to, right? That front three of Iowa of Illinois versus that Kansas offense. I think that is so awesome matchup. I'm probably I lean push and I probably lean the under because of some of the reasons you said. Now I do think their defense was horrible last year and it's going to be really bad again this year, but I think it can still improve. The staff knew that it needed to get more athletic, and did they get more athletic? I think they got more raw for sure. I think they brought in some transfers, especially on the defensive line. Right, Devin Phillips from Colorado State, he's actually pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie. But Gage Keys and Austin Booker they bring over from Minnesota, both guys that were upset they weren't playing at Minnesota because they're pretty damn good athletes. Right now, does that help you in the back end where you're getting toasted all the time because you don't have the speed on the back end? Maybe not. Maybe you rush the passer a little bit better, but the overall speed of the defense, right, comes in your back seven and or your back seven, and they don't really have a ton of that actually there. JB Brown, they're bringing in from Bowling Green. He might probably won't start, but Greg Young is actually a pretty good player. Um, but yeah, there's not much to like, to be honest. Demarius McGee is a good athlete. I don't even know if he's going to start there though at corner for LSU or from LSU. Um, Special teams was terrible last year though, right? And I don't go into ton into special teams. They got a kicker from Texas State who's pretty good, and they got a punter from Australia. So hopefully, that pans out. That helps them a little bit with field position battles and whatnot. But you're just gonna love watching Kansas in general, and it doesn't matter what you do this year. The best thing that you could do is just keep Lance Leipold, and that's what they did this offseason. So credit to Kansas, athletic department for breaking out the bank and making sure that they reward Lance Leipold for the job that he did and keep winning. Hopefully, 5, 6, 7 games at Kansas when he's there.
Yeah. Look, if you've been following since basically like the first month that we were doing this back in June, You know that I did take Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal in CD and I's fantasy little competition there, right? So I am
Yep.
expecting this offense to do a lot of things. It hurts me to say, but like I lean under. I do. I really do. And I was actually pretty close to just straight up taking it, but I think the volatility of this team is what takes me away from actually being able to bet anything on this team, right? And also, too, if you look at it, a very dangerous combination, right, is the false hope of turnover margin, right? Turnover margin, right? A lot of times is random. Just talking about that, Iowa State getting the opposite end of that, right? They were a top 30 team. Kansas was a top 30 team in turnover margin, right? And they had an explosive offense that really relied on explosive runs, right? Now, I know that they returned their entire offensive line back, but and Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean is also good too, and he's wicked fast. They can use any of those guys in the run game. Uh, I do think when you're relying on explosive runs and you're relying on turnovers on defense. Well, one, if those things hit like they did last year, you're going to win more games than you should. You're going to win games that you were less talented in, right? You're gonna find ways to scrape out those points, those key turnovers at the end of the game. Kind of the opposite effect you saw. Like they started out 5-0, and then you kind of saw it kind of regress a little bit, right? The TCU game, right? You saw a couple turnovers there late. Now again, TCU they could not stop their scoring, but Oklahoma, right? You saw it flip a little bit there as well. That's not to say that I'm not high on this offense, right? I really like it, but the schedule, Illinois, that's a really tough game, especially with that defensive line. You're asking a lot from Kansas's offensive line to handle Johnny Newton, Gabe Yakus, and Keith Richards. That's a lot to ask for. And a lot of some of their key games are on the road, like winnable games, like their ISU, that's on the road, winnable game. Cincinnati, that's a winnable game, that's on the road, right? Oklahoma State, that's a winnable game, that's on the road, right? So that's tough. I think that's tough. Uh, I am excited to watch this team though. So Kansas fans, I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm pooping on your team. I am not pooping on your team. I am excited to watch this team, and I can't wait for them to win over 6 games because I didn't bet it. I can't wait for it as long as they don't beat Illinois, right? I do have stuff on that, and maybe 2 other teams on this list that I have yet to make plays for yet. But other than that, you guys can go 9-3 for all I care. That would be awesome. And college football is great when there's a Kansas story going on, right? We all know that.
I do agree. I think the reason why I am hesitant on this Kansas team in general, I think last year the Big 12, I guess you could call it was down, right, in terms of like high end talent. So Kansas could compete with their inferior roster. They could still compete with some of those conference games. But this year, I think the whole conference gets better, right? With at least the average, everything kind of goes up. So it'll be tough for them. And like you said, like at Cincinnati, right, should be a winnable game, but it's on the road, right? Iowa State should be a winnable game, that's on the road. Oklahoma State, a game you'd like to win, that's on the road. So like, yeah, it's a tough break for Kansas, but you got Lance Leipold, you got Jalen Daniels. You're gonna be a
Yeah,
fun story.
there's so much to look
You
forward to as a Kansas fan.
you should be very happy. And in an NIL world with you got a pretty damn
Yes,
good NIL thing. Lance
and
Leipold can start
you're
leveraging that.
yep, you're recruiting at a higher level, right? Like one of these days, maybe the boosters will finally say, "Oh, you know what? Uh, let's build ourselves a better football stadium," right?
Yeah,
But yeah, for now,
you can go 5-7, maybe even 4-8, and not really take a step back in terms of where your program's heading, right?
exactly, I agree. So Kansas, look, I wish the best. Good luck. The defending Big 12 champions, Kansas State Wildcats.
Yep.
This team impressed. Now, this was a quote unquote sleeper team last year that like everyone had as a sleeper team. So to me, it's not surprising. It's such a bummer though, because I was on them pretty early, but then I was like kind of got talked away because like, oh, everyone's on Kansas State, everyone and their mom.
Mhm.
So then I was like, I kind of switched my sleeper pick to Baylor kind of last minute, and course, I regret it. But uh, they lost a lot of talent here. They lost a lot of talent, but there's also a lot, I think, to look forward to. And Chris Kleiman has done a fantastic job with this program. This team, this program just develops talent. They just develop talent. That's all they do. They just churn out guys that are studs. That's what they do. So I really like Kansas State. Of course, I was riding them a lot last year when they were getting hot. But is it time to ride them this year? Right, the line's at 8.5. That's a lot of wins for Kansas State. But they're a good team. What are your thoughts?
I think there's like you said, they did lose a lot, right? Deuce Vaughn's not going to be an easy replacement. I do love Trayshawn Ward, and I do love the compliment that DJ Giddens provides him. I think losing your DBs is tough, and then obviously your punter and kicker like on Ty Zetner. I don't know a ton about kicking and punting, but I know he was pretty impactful for him. But the bright side is I do think you have the two best players in the Big 12, and I don't think I'm really exaggerating when I say that. And Cooper Beebe, well, I think it's a consensus, top 15 player in the country, top 10 player in the country. And then the guy everybody has to know is Kelly Duke. Right? If you're a Kansas State fan, diehard, you remember him from a couple years ago, started over Felix Anaduki Uzoma, right, before he got hurt, and then switched positions so Felix could play. Now he's back to edge. I think he's going to be really, really awesome. And then Will Howard comes back. How much better can he get with a full off season after being, the guy? He's kind of been thrown in the fire every year. This year it's finally like, he's settled in, to his spot. He understands, what he's at. I do think they have a really interesting, true freshman there, Avery Johnson. He's a 4.4 quarterback athlete. Runs the 4.4 40 as a quarterback. I think they're gonna have some fun reps for him or packages for him, if they have to, get some things. I think wide receiver, Philip Brooks is a pretty good player. I like him. Keegan Johnson, I think is gonna be better at Kansas State than he was at Iowa, for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Everywhere else, RJ Garcia's fine player at third option, but I don't like the depth there at all. But they obviously at the tight end, Benson Newt, I think it's how you say his name. He's so valuable. Him and Will Howard love each other, right? They're really, really well connected on the field. The defense, I think their defense is where you definitely worry about him, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Felix Enadiki Izama is a big loss, right? Julius Brent's a big loss. Hayes is a big loss, right? The secondary is entirely young and new, right? I don't hate it. I don't hate the secondary, but it's new. There's not a lot there, but and their defense taking that step forward that they did last year was definitely was part of their success last year. What made them able to win those close games for sure. But their offensive line is unbelievable this year. It's gonna be awesome. It really is. Like they play some tough teams this year, even out of conference. Like Troy, not a slouch. Missouri on the road, that's not a slouch. Kansas State fans know that, right? Uh, Cooper Beebe, we know is a dog, right? Their offensive line, they're all back. Panzer, 950 snaps. Gillum, 950 snaps. Levison Duffy are back at tackle. I mean, like, come on. This is a crazy offensive line. And guess what? Yeah, Deuce Vaughn is out, but enter Trayshawn Ward, right? A guy that somehow is not seeing the field at Florida State, which is pretty crazy. Like, that is a talented running back in there. And I am a Will Howard lover. I'm a Will Howard lover. But it is just the schedule that gets me. It's just the schedule. I think Missouri on the road, even Troy at home, like that's a lot. And then like you go to Texas Tech, you go to Stillwater, you go to Texas. Like your road games are tough. Your road games are tough. So and you also don't draw West Virginia, right? Which is like kind of what everyone wants to draw if you're in the
Come
Big 12.
on.
Come on, come on. But there's some losable games on here, right? So you
The
only
back
draw,
half of the schedule is
yeah,
tough.
and
I
a
mean,
lot of
they
these
got early
teams,
bye week. I hate early bye weeks. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Kansas State.
exactly.
I hate early bye weeks because you could like they could be 4-0, right, with three really good wins against Troy, at Missouri, and UCF, and then you get a bye week, but then you got 8 more games to play in a row, right? When everyone's beat up in conference play, I don't like it at all.
Yeah, and I do think Eli Huggins at nose tackle last year, that was a leader in the locker room. He was a leader on their defense, and he
Mm,
absolutely plugged up the middle. He was really, really good. Of course, Ivuso Somalu, right? If he takes a step, then this it could be a better defensive line in that way, right? If we're talking about, Khalid Duke taking a step at edge as well. Well, we know he's good at edge, right? But if he's back there doing his thing, uh, Brandon Mott is also pretty decent as well. Like, I think people like his upside a lot as well. So there's some stuff to like there on the defensive line. Secondary, again, we talked about being young. I don't hate this linebacking core. They're experienced.
they're all
That's all you
back.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you need, right? I mean, you just need to win 9 games. You just need experienced linebackers in the Big 12, right? Just
Mm.
experience. So I don't know. I just said that 8.5 was a great line. I push right there. I don't lean over. I don't lean under. I think it's a great push. I think if you took out Missouri in that schedule, I'd be pounding the table.
It's not even that I think they're going to lose to Missouri because I don't. I think and Missouri's a fine team, and I think we're kind of interested to see what Missouri's doing this year, but it's the depth, it's the attrition that's going to be taking place with the dynamics of the schedule. I hate to go back to it, but this team is I love if they're top 22 players, right? Like their first their ones are I love it. I think you put them up against most teams on their schedule and they're really really damn good. The problem is the depth. I mean, at defensive end you've got depth, at O-line you have depth. Everywhere else I don't really love your depth, right? You're either breaking in new guys in the front end who we like but are young, and behind them are even less experienced guys. Um, so yeah, so a couple injuries on this team, and they could be in. That's what scares me from taking the over, right? Because I think this is a talented, right. Your ones are there. That's 9. I see 9 wins on here for sure. But I
10
think,
even.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think the problem is to go a 12 game seasons can be hard.
Yeah. Look, I love Kansas State. I really do. I love Chris Kleiman. I love the coaches that make the jump and succeed, right? Because a lot of people, they don't give those coaches enough credit. They're not your first hire. They're not the fans' favorite hire, right? It's not the flashy hire, right? Look, if A&M, like A&M had, well, when they were looking for coaches and they got Jimbo, right? If they had hired like a D3 quarterback, like a Jeff Traylor, or like if they'd hired like a Jeff Traylor, right? Or a Joey McGuire, I think like people would have been pretty upset, right? People would have been furious. But I love when those guys succeed. I love when those guys
Yep.
succeed. I know those were like high school coach examples, right? But yeah, same thing. You jump up a level, right? Get that level promotion. So I'm rooting for you, Kansas State. I really think this is a really good team, right? And you could still
Mm.
go 8-4, right, and make the Big 12 championship. I mean, y'all went 9-3 last year and won the whole thing, right? So if you're dropping out a conference game, you can still make the Big 12 championship. So just because I'm not willing to take the over on the over under does not mean I'm not high on this team. I think this is a very good team. I think 8.5, right? That's not a line that Kansas State always sees, right? So I think that is representative of how good this team could be. Let's talk about Oklahoma. Wildly disappointing season last year for Oklahoma fans. Something that they are not used to at all.
And yet they're up to 9.5 on their win total.
Yeah. So I'll let
What
you take
happened?
over.
What happened? To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm actually taking the over on this.
Whoa.
Yep. Yeah, I am drinking
Gosh.
all of that Kool-Aid with the Brent Venables year 2 jump. We did our year 2 coaches draft, and since then I'm actually way higher on Venables than I was before then because we've gone through summer, we've gone through most of fall camp, and we've seen that progression happen. That we were kind of thinking about, but it's actually happening now. I think they do lose some good players. I think both tackles, Wanya Morris, Anton Harrison, all right, were studs for them. I think they do replace them pretty well. They got some guys from Stanford and TCU. Walter Ruse is a good player. He'll be coming in there. I obviously Marvin Mims. I think he's really, really good. I think he's gonna be really good in the NFL. If you're a fantasy guy, I mean, I don't I don't really give out fantasy advice, but I think he's really damn good. I think he's if you're doing a dynasty league, I think he'd be someone to talk about. But back to Oklahoma for this year, I think Dylan Gabriel, again, I love him. I love him. I think he's gonna take another step forward. Right. He's just gotta stay healthy though. But even if he's not, right, Jackson Arnold, all signs seems that he's a stud, and like we kind of knew that. But I think Gabriel can win you 10 games and then some, especially with the schedule. I mean, at Texas, well, not at Texas, but you get the Texas on the neutral site. Their out of conference game, SMU is very interesting, but it's at home. Everyone else, I mean, at BYU is tough. You get to go to Stillwater and Oklahoma State, and TCU at the finish line. I don't think this is a crazy hard schedule. That's why the line is so high, and I think they're going to take advantage of it. Right? Are they on the same level as Texas? And no, I don't think so. I think Brent Venables a year behind Steve Sarkisian. He should be. But I think the defense is going to take a whole heck of a leap forward with the transfer portals they got, with the depth that's developing behind them, with the young guys, right? Specifically Billy Bowman and Woody Washington, that two older guys in that room. They're damn good in the back end. What say you?
Uh, I'm almost with you. I lean. I do. This is a good team. This is a really good team. It does worry me that you lose both tackles. It would have okay like last year, right? Like I don't love taking overs. I do sometimes. I do. You'll see me do it. Um, you might see me do it today. Uh, but I don't really love taking overs if you don't really have a solid backup quarterback. But Jackson Arnold does. He's a great like from what we've seen. I know he's a true freshman. But from what we've seen, he is a good football player. So and running back group, Javante Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk. I mean, they don't lose a step there at all. They're really awesome. I think like wide receiver, the issue I have is like, can we get an alpha in there? Right? Like, is Jilla Farouk going to be an alpha? I don't think he's necessarily an alpha, right? Is Brennan
It's got to be
Thompson
one of those
like
transfers, yeah.
a big transfer? Like it's going to be Andre Anthony? Like who's it going to be? Who's going to be the guy that steps up
Break Stoops.
and is that guy? I love Jeff Levy on offense. I don't think they're not. I think they'll score points. They're going to be a pretty decent offensive team. Um, I do like some of these defensive guys that, like Billy Bowman, Woody Washington. I do like some of these defensive guys, and of course, Brett Venables is a defensive guy. Like you got to trust him there. But I'm still shook just from last season. I still am shook. I can't shake it off. But it might cost me money. It might cost me money. We'll see. But I do like this team a lot. I do like they should be the second odds on favorite in the Big 12. They should be, right? I do think though, like I worry also, not that this didn't impact my pick at all, but it is interesting though, the dynamic of Oklahoma and Texas leaving, right? Going to Stillwater this year, that environment might be the craziest thing we've ever seen, like in Stillwater ever. So like a road game like that worries me a lot. But like their other road games are not difficult. That's also why the schedule in that dynamic favors you a lot, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, be like Provo is a tough place to play, but they're less talented than Oklahoma, right? Cincinnati,
By week 12, Oklahoma should be a well-oiled machine. You'd think, unless the wheels have fallen off this year. But by week 12, I mean you'd think their defense would be playing at a pretty high level.
yeah, and Kansas is not a scary environment. Nippert Stadium, that Nippert Stadium will be packed for that game. It will be, but again, they're much more talented than Cincinnati. So all their big games, like really, like where they like their TCU, right? Uh, Texas at neutral site, I guess. But I'd say like the scariest game on their schedule, I think, is Oklahoma State. Like to slip up for that second loss, if they lose to Texas, right, and they slip up to Oklahoma State, then all it takes is just I don't know, it just takes a couple turnovers.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to play Baylor this year, which is really nice. Um, yeah, and they draw a lot of these. Is that every single new? No, they don't draw Houston, I guess, but yeah, and then TCU, that could be a tough game. That could be again a tough game. So I was really close to taking the over here, but I just couldn't do it. I don't know why. I'm sorry, Oklahoma fans. I just couldn't do it. I still have not made a single pick yet at all, but they're coming. I promise. I promise people they're coming.
Yeah, if you
So
want to talk about, um, some transfers that Oklahoma's bringing in, or at least I'm sorry, I want to talk about them. I think Dason McCullum, from Indiana to play linebacker for him. I think he's a really, really good player. There's a reason why he was so highly sought after in the transfer portal is because of how well he played as a true freshman. Now he gets a year to be coached, or a summer, an offseason to be coached by, Brent Venables and the staff there. He'll plug and play right there next alongside two other sophomores and Gentry Williams and uh Jaron Kanek and Dan Stutzman. I mean, they got a lot of depth there. Um, I guess I wouldn't say a lot of depth. I'm sorry, Gentry Williams, the cornerback. I'm so sorry. Him and Woody Washington. I'm getting a little mixed up here, but and then at safety they bring in Reggie Pearson right from Texas Tech, who we know, Matthew's pretty high on. And then also Philip Paya from Utah State. He's a guy that not many people have really heard of. He's kind of been hurt a little bit, but he could be a dude, right? He was really, really good. People who watch film there. Utah State had a damn good defensive line rotation, actually, and he was one of them. When he played, he was really, really good. And I think Brent Venables will get the best out of him. So I think schedule dynamics, I think that they're deeper than they were last year. Last year, I mean,
it's first year.
the floor
It's
fell out under them. Well, it
first
was
year depth issues. First year depth issues.
yes, and especially at the quarterback position behind Dylan Gabriel, there was nobody. It was general booty, right? And it was literally a booty room. And now I think with Jackson Arnold there, I think with Dylan Gabriel, you know, year two under Jeff Lebby in this Oklahoma offense, right? Dylan Gabriel's been with Jeff Lebby for a little bit, but um, or before, but yeah, I think this is a 10-win team for sure. 11 with upside. Obviously, Texas, I think, is a loss because of how high we are on Texas, but nobody else scares me. I think an interesting part that you said though, with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, they're gonna get. I mean, every year Oklahoma and Texas have a target on their back, from teams just because of the success they've had and at least the logo of Texas. But I think they're gonna be extra chippy. A lot of these Big 12 teams are gonna be pretty upset and want to get the last laugh with Oklahoma as they're leaving the conference. So I do think getting to like playing like a Kansas or a TCU or Oklahoma State, like you said, some of these like older Big 12 schools, I think is going to be really interesting. But again, I'm taking the over here. I love this Oklahoma team. Love the dynamics of the schedule. I think they're going to be pretty damn good.
Oklahoma State. Them Cowboys. Uh they I mean, if you look at the transfer portal numbers, the sheer numbers, there's a lot of loss in the transfer portal. Spencer Sanders being one, right? Of course, at quarterback, Jabbar Muhammad, Mason Cobb. Mason Cobb going to USC. It's a guy that the Aggies missed out on. Bummer. But
Yep.
definitely this is a really, really, really interesting team. Bringing Alan Bowman, who is not unfamiliar with the Big 12. They had pretty terrible rushing offense last year. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this team?
I mean, I like to live when talking about Oklahoma State, or at least betting on Oklahoma State. I like to live by the rule of never doubt Mike Gundy, because anytime you do, he's gonna prove you wrong. This year, I don't know that this is the year to do that. I think 6.5 is pretty high for them, right? I'm gonna stay out of it. I'm not gonna make a play either way. I'll probably lean at I think 6 wins is kind of where they're at. They got to stay healthy though. Their offense will be interesting, right? We'll see how Alan Bowman does. I think Spencer Sanders was a damn good player, and I think they learned that pretty quickly when he got hurt and how much they struggled to move the ball last year. The offensive line was pretty bad last year, and part of the reason why Spencer Sanders got hurt. But they were healthy all spring. They looked like they got better. We'll see about it. I think Arlen Bruce, right from Iowa, is an interesting player there. Obviously Brendan Presley returns, Jaden Bray, and then Blaine Green is finally his time. He's a former high recruit. He's there now. So we'll see offensively. I think Alan Bowman, I don't know if I don't love him, but I think he's obviously got a pretty high floor. been having that experience at Texas Tech and in the Big 12. But yeah, I'm gonna stay with a no play lean under. I think 6 wins is pretty much where they're gonna be at.
You know what they say: save a horse, ride a cowboy. And that is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be riding Oklahoma State. Give me the over 6.5 wins. I get it. Spencer Sanders
Wow.
gone. Oh no, there were so many transfers out of there. A lot of those, who cares? Right. Mason Cobb was kind of a big one, but we talk about linebacker being a pretty replaceable position. It's a pretty replaceable position. The wide
Yeah.
receiver room gets a little bit better, right? Stribling from Washington State is a good football player. Leon Johnson from D3, big 6'3", right? Guy that was All American D3. That's a good football player that I think they're really high on. And if we know anything about Mike Gundy, he loves his D3 football players, and they pay off when he goes and gets them. I don't know what it is about him or his staff that just goes and gets guys in D3, but he always finds good ones. He always finds good ones. Of course, Allen Bruce, we haven't seen a lot of, but um, he could be pretty good too. Brendan Presley is obviously a good safety blanket for Alan Bowman. Again, Alan Bowman, I think for Oklahoma State, if you look at this, let's look at the schedule too, right? I think Alan Bowman doesn't need to be elite to win 7 games. Central
Oh
Arkansas,
no.
Arizona State, South Alabama. South Alabama's a good team. That is not, but you get them at home, right? It's not. It's a losable game, right? But if you're looking at out conference, you should be 3-0, right? Iowa State, you should be able to go in there and get a win, right? Kansas, you get at home, right? West Virginia, you should be able to go there and get a win. Cincinnati, you should be able to win that game. UCF, you might be able to go in the bounce house and get a win there as well. Houston, they play all 4 of the newcomers into the Big 12, right? And an out of conference schedule that does not include, I'll say, a Power 5 team with a win loss or win total over 6, right?
And
And
they'll be breaking in Jaden Rashada, right? Week
and
2
they'll
of Jaden
yeah,
Rashada.
and they'll be breaking in a true freshman. And guess what? In West Virginia, you also draw, right? So you draw arguably the 5 worst teams in the Big 12. I'm asking Mike Gundy. I'm asking Mike Gundy to go 500 in the Big 12. That's all I'm asking. Pretty much. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
And Mike Gundy in his 16-year career there, 17-year career, I won't count his first year, right? Because that was bologna sandwich. 3 times he has gone under 6 wins, and there were 6 wins on the dot, right? He has never not made a bowl game except for his first season. That's unbelievable. This guy just does not, he just coaches well. He's just a great coach, right? And guess what? Defensively, yeah, sure, you lose Mason Cobb, okay, but maybe they got some talent there. Enough. All I ask for is enough. And I think they understand too that based on their personnel, right? Mike Gundy knows more than I do. They're switching it up to a 3-3-5 this year. And guess what?
Yep.
That's very common in the Big 12. And it's also very effective in the Big 12. We've seen TCU runs it, Iowa State runs it, Kansas State's run a lot of it, right? And those are all teams that have had a lot of success in recent years defensively, right?
Credit
So
to
if you
Mike
find
Gundy. DJ
credit to Mike
Durkin
Gundy,
would never.
you would never, although he did kind of,
Well,
they
he
took
wouldn't
him in the
change
wrong
from
direction. Yeah.
he wouldn't change to adapt to his personnel, which is so smart. I mean, you could have the best scheme in the world, but if you don't have the players for it, what are you doing? You could run a much worse scheme, right? But it could be actually way better fit for your personnel, and that can make the whole world of difference. Credit to him for doing that.
Yeah, and I think they got more in the transfer portal than they lost. I think Justin Kirkland might be a dude from Utah Tech. I know he's coming up a level, but again, we
Yep.
talk about Mike Gundy going in and getting these guys from D2, D3 that are good. I think he's solid. I think Anthony Goodlow could be a good transfer as well. Justin Wright at linebacker, who's replacing Mason Cobb, if he's fine, he's fine, right? I just think with this schedule, it's fine. Their offensive line is also, look, they weren't fantastic last year. Okay. Sure, they lost 2 guys with a lot of snaps, but they're very old in there and they're big. Average height 6'5" there across the board. And Bowman's 6'3", so he's not small, right? So I think he can I think he'll be able to navigate that a little bit. Dalton Cooper's a transfer that they got on the offensive line. Uh I think he might be good too. I feel really good about this over. When I started seeing all these kids leaving Oklahoma State, I'm like, wow, it's really falling off the wheels for Mike Gundy. And then I did some digging and I'm like, they would never fall under Mike Gundy. They wouldn't. Because again, like you said, the second you doubt Mike Gundy is exactly when he he costs you money, is what he does, right? So everyone, let's save a horse and ride some Cowboys. All right. What do you say? Texas. Texas. I mean, look, I'm a Texas A&M fan. I'm not gonna flash the horns down right now. I will
I
give him
just
a
did.
giggle. I'll give him a giggle. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, I'll let you go first. I'll let you
I
go
know
first.
this is gonna pain you to talk about Texas because I know how you actually feel about them unbiasedly, and I feel the same way. I believe I'm taking the over on this. I think this 9.5 is criminally low. I think it's only that way because they play Alabama week 2, and like we talked about earlier, Matthew and I off air, I think they have a really damn good chance of going into Alabama and beating them week 2, especially with the quarterback controversy there. I wouldn't say controversy. I would just say question mark there. I think they lose Bijan Robinson, right, and Roshan Johnson, two of the leaders of the team. Bijan might have been the best player in college football last year. Roshan was probably the best leader in college football last year. DeMarvion overshown also to the Cowboys. But damn, this team is good. This team is deep. Steve Sarkisian has done such a good job of just plucking, a transfer here and there and recruiting really, really well. I mean, AD Mitchell, right, comes over from Georgia. He was going to be the top player, the top wide receiver coming back on a national championship team last year, and he comes over to Texas, and he'll probably be the second or third guy there with Xavier Worthy, and then I mean I'm super high on Isaiah Nayor, Jordan Whittington's be there, Jonte Cook, right at tight end. Don't even get me started on Tavion Sanders. I mean this team is really really good. Offensive line, right, was going to be a question mark last year. It was damn good, right? Kelvin Banks is a stud at left tackle. He might be,
He's
you
a
know,
superstar.
he's super.
He's a
Yeah,
superstar.
yeah.
He's a
Now
superstar
Cooper Beebe is a better player than him. I'm gonna say that because I love Cooper Beebe, but
right
Kellen Banks
now.
is
Right
right
now he
there
is,
as a
but
as a sophomore, and he's a left tackle, so a little bit more valuable, protecting Quinn Ewers' blind side. I know everybody's expecting Quinn Ewers to take that jump this year. I am too. I'm really on. I think he's gonna be really damn good this year. I think he'll probably be a high draft pick because of how well he's gonna play and how many wins Texas is gonna have. DJ Campbell, good player. He's going to start somewhere, right? He's finally panning out. He's a former 5-star guy. Cole Hudson, might slide over into center as it started as a right guard last year. Um, yeah, I mean, Christian Jones is a good right tackle, 5th-year guy. I mean, offensively, I mean, we'll get to the defense later, but offensively, this team is good. And obviously, the most valuable weapon offensively is Steve Sarkisian. And his play design and his play calling and his schemes, I think it's just so good. Running backs I didn't really talk about with Jonathan Brooks. I know you like Jonathan Brooks. But they got good depth. Jaden Blue, right? CJ Baxter's a damn good player. Keelan Robinson, a really, really good change of pace player. I think this Texas team is good.
yeah. And I talked earlier about look, I don't love taking overs if like it's what if something happens to the starter, right? Can they still do it with the backup? The answer is yes. Malik Murphy is a dude. Okay. Quinn
And
Ewers
it
is
sounds like Arch Manning has been playing well.
better. Oh boy, was that spring game terrible.
I
And I was laughing the entire time. But yeah, a key loss, Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson. Who cares? Okay. Do we need to go into the running back room? Do I need to do it? Do I need to bring out the running back room? Let's do it. Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, CJ/Cedric Baxter, Savion Red, Keelan Robinson. Keelan Robinson might be their 4th or 5th string running back. Are you serious? This is a loaded running back room. I don't care if Bijan's gone. I don't care. They didn't even use him all that much. Like when they really needed him. Texas Tech, they didn't even really use him when they needed him. So it's like I don't know. And I think Steve Sarkisian, he's. I hope he's learned from that, right? And we're 9.5. It's at 9.5 because it's the discount. It's the Bama discount, right? It is the Bama discount. It's Texas. What it really says is you are a 10.5 over under team, right, for the year. But you play Bama at Bama, right? So we're gonna make it 9. We're gonna call it 9.5, right? And expect you to basically only lose one time in the Big 12. Well, they might go undefeated in the Big 12. And okay, and before I even go any further, right? people cannot say that I am just, oh, they do this every year. They do this every year. You can say that, okay? I'll tell you, I bet the under on Texas last year.
Cash.
You bet your butt I did, and I cashed, right? Like I've been there. I've been there to know that, okay, this team doesn't have it. Oh, this team, like, because these teams were not physical. They weren't there yet, right? Coaching was questionable. Maybe they had some talent, but it just, for whatever reason, it was not there. I hate to say it, but it's there this year. It really is. The secondary gets
Boy,
a
is
lot
it.
better. The secondary gets a lot better. I mean, yeah, Jalen Catalon. Are people forgetting who this dude was? That dude was a projected early second round pick just a year ago before he got hurt, right? Just a year ago at Arkansas. And now he's transferring over to Texas. I was like, holy cow, that's a gigantic. I don't think people understand how big of a get that was. And
He
Gavin
doesn't even have to
Holmes
start. He doesn't have to
is,
start for
he
him
doesn't even
either.
have to
He can
start.
just go in and fly around like the freak athlete he is.
Yes, and Gavin Holmes, who was a massive transfer, like he could start. He might not also. Like he might just be in the rotation. Like they have depth there. They just have depth at places. And even at linebacker, they're fine. Right? I mean, what, Jalen Ford? Solid guy. I
Leader.
get they lost Tucker Dorsey, talked about Overshown, but they're fine. I mean, Byron Murphy's good. Like a defensive line is also like something that, maybe they haven't always had um a whole lot of talent there, but it feels like they do a little bit, right? Like Byron Murphy's he's pretty good. Devontae Sweat, he's also good as well. So I don't know. This should be a 10-win team, and if Quinn Ewers wasn't even in the picture, this should also still be a 10-win team. So I'm all over it. I took it. Business is business. Sorry if
Again,
any
yeah.
Aggies. Sorry if any Aggies are out there watching, but business is business. So Um, that's what I had to do. And also, like, you also know what kind of coach Steve Sarkisian is too. Like, wow, such a scary hire, especially as an A&M fan. Now he's coming to the SEC. He's like, you hired Paul Christ as an analyst. Like, that's pretty wild, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty wild. And also too, like, I think that's a good hire too, because I think like if you have another voice in there saying, because I think there are also some his now he was unbelievable at Bama, but if there was a criticism, and same with Lane Kiffin, but now that was kind of silenced at Ole Miss since he's been there. But knowing when to run the ball is probably like would be if there was a Steve Sarkisian flaw in his offensive play calling, right? Like what game situations should he be running the ball? When you got a guy like Paul Christian there, he'll I think having that other voice telling he knows how to run the ball. He knows how to run the ball. So this is just a really good team. And special teams, I don't think he's going to take any step backs, reasonably so. I don't think. They took care of the ball last year, which if they do that again, I think they're fine. I really think this could be a really really good team. This is not a national championship contending team, but this is a very very good football team, and they're the best team in the Big 12. They are. I'll say it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the fact that their win total is the same as Oklahoma's, don't let that confuse you. Texas is probably going to be at like 10-point favorites. Oklahoma, maybe around a touchdown, right? But
It'll probably be like
it's not.
touchdown.
Yeah, but that's more because it's a rivalry game. But I don't know. I think this team. I think 2024 is probably the year where they actually make the jump to legit championship contenders in the college football playoff. But I think that 2023 is the year to do it because of them being in the Big 12 and being able to get tested early with Bama, right? Sure, they could lose that game and still run the table and then also make the college football playoff where they are battle tested and they are ready to go up against the caliber athlete they're going to see. And I think they have the athletes to match up with them, especially offensively. But the reason why I'm high on them and I'm taking the over is the depth defensively, right? I think, like you talked about Jalen Ford, I think their defensive line is underratedly really, really deep. I mean, they took Trill Carter, right, in the spring. He was a starter at Minnesota for 3 years. And he's going to be like their third string, fourth string defensive tackle. I mean, they have crazy depth there. You talked about, Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat. They've been awesome in in um in fall camp, where so much so that they've almost had to change some drills because they're doing so well, and it's not because the offensive line is bad. We talked about it earlier.
It's
It's a
not.
damn good offensive line group. It's just because how disruptive they've been. It'll be about staying healthy with those key guys. I think Quinn Ewers makes them a championship contender. I think Malik Murphy makes them. They'll still probably win 10 games with Malik Murphy, but um, yeah, I'd hate for some of those playmakers to get hurt just for the sake of college football and watching elite talents and elite offenses go around. But yeah, I think credit to Steve Sarkisian. He's built this program the right way. He saw all those, hotshot head coaches coming to Texas and build it from the outside in. He's built it from the inside out, starting with, coaching staff and getting rid of, poison in his locker room, right? With coaching or with players. And he's built it from the defensive line and offensive line. And, you can still have elite talent on the outside, like he's had, like through the transfer portal and Xavier Worthy there. So I don't know. And Quinn Ewers was a transfer portal guy. I don't know. This is a team that I'm really excited to watch for week 2. Bama, it's gonna be awesome. I think it's gonna be a great game.
Yeah, we talked about the Bama discount. They could win that game. They could hit this
Yeah,
over with losing that game, but there's a very good chance that they can win that game.
and
I
I
mean,
think yeah. Oh yeah, and I might depending on who's starting for Bama, right? I might sprinkle some on Texas. If it's Jalen Milroe, I might really consider sprinkling some on Texas to go in there on the road and cover. But that's a while away from now. We can worry about that when we get there. But I
I
also
mean,
think this team has,
it's only 3 weeks away. Like
which is
so,
awesome. God, we're so close to college football. But we're also I think the depth and the talent of this team is good enough to kind of roll over against these Big 12 teams to make sure that they don't have to play their A game and they can still go out and beat BYU. I guess maybe at Baylor if they don't play their A+ game, they can still play a B- game and win that. Even though I'm pretty high on Baylor, I'm taking their over. I bet Houston at TCU will be a tough game, but they can lose to Bama and lose one other game and still be fine, for that win total over. So yeah, I'm very happy with the over pick here. I'm no complaints that it's at 9.5.
ECU. I mean, I could get into how their season went last year, but everyone knows they had a run. It was awesome. It was great. Sonny Dykes was awesome. Okay. But they lost a lot. They lost a lot. Max Duggan, Steve Avila, Quinn Johnston, Demario Davis, Kendre Miller, Dylan Horton. I mean, all gone. All gone. Uh, that's a lot of production to replace. It is pretty miraculous that they were legitimately a top 10 team if you were to power rank them, right? But it is pretty amazing that they made it to the national championship. Uh, this was a team that was in the national championship last year, though, and the over-unders at 7.5. So, well, what's the deal?
Yeah, I don't. I again, they lost a ton. Now I like some of their returning guys. Chandler Morris, good player. Josh Newton might be the best corner in the Big 12. You got Hodge and Hodges, right? The law firm there at linebacker. Their O line seems to be pretty good. I don't know if it'll be a strength. They got a good transfer coming in from Maryland, like Colton Deary, Willis Patrick. They're pretty high on, to play right guard for them. But the transfers from the wide receiver core super interesting. John Paul Richardson, Oklahoma State, JoJo Earl, Alabama, Jack Beck, LSU. And Savion Williams is still there. He's a 6'4" dude, hoping to take that step into that Quentin Johnston role, be the alpha in that room. 7.5 schedule dynamics. It's not a brutal schedule. Down the stretch, it gets tough, right? They have that late bye, which I do like. I tend to like. But when you got to go Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma, that's brutal. That's a brutal stretch for anybody. And
Yeah,
then
and to get
Kansas
to the
State before the
bye,
bye too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you got to go
you
to
can limp
Manhattan.
into Kansas State. Yeah, so that'll be tough. I think they could be 7-0 right now and ranked 7-0 and be ranked really really high, and they could finish 7-5, kind of like Ole Miss did. Was that a year ago or 2 years ago? But yeah, what say you?
Yeah, I lean over here. It's not a play for me, just because of like how big the losses are. I do think Sonny Dykes, like he did last year, did very well in the transfer portal. Did very well. Garrett Riley, of course, is also a big loss too. But Kendall Briles is come on, he's a proven offensive coordinator. Forget the stuff off the field, right? Like he's a good. Well, we're not going to forget it, right?
Yeah,
But look,
we should not forget it.
we should not. Sorry, we should not forget it. But if you're looking at it strictly from a football standpoint, like he look.
It's a good
Also,
hire.
I'll say this as well. Like this team ran the ball very effectively last year, very very effectively, and they don't have Kendra Miller anymore, right? They don't have uh they lose
Max
Steven Vila.
Duggan
That
helped him too.
Mike Max Duggan was really effective in the run game as well. Garrett Riley had a lot to do with that as well. But Kendall Briles, I think, is gonna he was a good hire because I think the strength of this team might be pushing the ball downfield, even without Quinn Johnson and Demario Davis. Or not what's his name? Uh
Darius
Da-
Davis.
Darius Davis. Gosh, I think I said Demario Davis earlier, but sorry, Saints fans and TCU fans. But uh look, they only dropped back for passing 45% of their plays last year, as you can see on the screen there. It's good for 85th in the country. Well, sorry, I mean you can see that. Yeah, 45.91%. Yep, that's 85th in the country. I think they're going to be more pass heavy this year, and I think Chandler Morris has the arm to do that. I think Max Duggan. I think what made him good too was like his ability to extend the play, right? Hit the guys that were open. I think the run game benefited him a lot. I think he was really good in play action. I think it's going to be a lot different. I think it's going to be a lot different. The offensive line definitely takes a step back, but they get some guys in the portal. I mean, Tommy Brockermeyer's no slouch. That's a Bama guy, right? He was highly recruited. Willis Patrick, I think. Willis Patrick. Well, Brockermeyer might not even start, but I think they're really high on Willis Patrick. Nope, not Patrick Willis. Willis Patrick.
Willis
They're pretty high.
Patrick.
Yeah, and Colton Deary from Maryland also is a pretty good guy that they have. So, um, yeah, I get that Quinn Johnson is like a different breed, but Savion Williams is okay, right? They're not the same player, right? But the build is look, he's fine on the outside. He can play on the outside. Okay. But also, like, if you know anything about like Kendall Briles, Art Briles, Josh Heupel, like any of those offenses, right? Though that old Baylor offense, you don't need elite receivers, right? I mean, a lot of these receivers, they ball out, right, in these offensive systems and they get to the NFL. I mean, how many of them can we name off the top of our head? I mean, Coleman, I mean, Kendall Wright. Well, we'll see about Jalen Hyatt. But so you don't need like elite receivers to run this offense at a high level. So while Quinn Johnson is, yes, a big loss, I think their biggest loss is actually like their pass rush, but their defense is still going to be good. Their defense is still going to be good. They lose, sure, like their top four pass rushers by, I guess, sack level or pressure rate or whatever you want to go by. But Dylan Horton being, the obviously the big one, but, uh, Paul Oyewale or Oyewale, I think maybe is how you say it, but 6'4", 270, coming off fast off the edge. That could be pretty dynamic. You talking about the Hodge and Hodges, solid. So I don't know. They're both back. Shadrack Banks also. They've been saying that he's been pretty good for him. He's been flashing the spring at linebacker. But if people Texas A&M, it's funny because Texas A&M fans are like, why do I know that name? He was a wide receiver for Texas
Mm-hmm.
A&M, believe it or not. So kind of a name drop for A&M fans if you really follow that stuff. But now he's playing linebacker for TCU, which he's been flying. He might not start, but I think he'll definitely get some playing time. And they've been saying he's been doing really well. So I'm all over that. Or Jonathan Bax, the true freshman, could be another guy
Yep.
at linebacker. But then the entire secondary comes back. So, which was like a pretty okay secondary. Made some big plays. We saw in the Michigan game, right? The big one obviously is Josh Newton, right? Absolute stud. Avery Helm, nice transfer. Channing Canada was like one of the top JUCO cornerback transfers in the country. So like again, Sonny Dykes, I think he did like all these guys I'm listening that they got out of the transfer portal, like I like a lot. So um just do not be surprised if TCU goes over again, right? And So this could be good. I'm staying away from it. Again, I lean over, but I'm not taking it. Just there's a lot of roster change, right? There's some volatility to this with the new offensive coordinator. I just, a lot of questions there. So I will be staying away.
Yeah, I think I again I lean over. I do like this team a lot. It's similar to the Kansas State effect to where I like their top 11 players on each side of the ball. I think they're fine. I think they're pretty damn good compared to the rest of this conference. The part that worries me is I think they could really, really struggle on the back half of their schedule because it is so backloaded and because, yes, they're deep at linebacker and they're deep at running back, which is a room we haven't even talked about yet. With you got to replace Kendra Miller, obviously, but Amani Bailey is awesome. I mean, TCU fans know anytime he came in for Kendra Miller, he was really, really good. Trent Battle, a good compliment to him, as more of a thunder back to the lightning of Imani Bailey. And then Trey Sanders is kind of a unicorn there. Every year he gets, healthy and further away from that accident he had. He seems to be looking better and better. So it can be a really special room. But like running back and linebacker are their deepest rooms, and those don't really win you games. When it comes down to it. Yes, like those are important positions for sure, but you need pass rushers, you need people to defend the pass, you need people to protect your quarterback, right? And so I don't know how deep they are. And when it comes into the back half of the Big 12 schedule, how healthy are they going to be, which is something you can't project. So that's why I do tend to stay away from it. I think talent wise, the team is absolutely over 7.5 win team for sure. We know Sonny Dykes is a good coach. We know I like Kendall Briles pretty well too. And I think him and Chandler Morris are a really interesting fit. But yeah, I don't know if it's a team that it's a team that I don't trust the whole roster to win 8 games, with the schedule that they have and the dynamics of it being so backloaded. Also, SMU in week 4, super interesting. SMU gets a couple of Big 12 teams with Oklahoma and TCU, right? I think it's Oklahoma. Maybe it's another team, but and SMU could be a sleeper team to upset one of those Big 12 teams in the early out of conference.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about one of my favorite teams. Yes, I know it's in state, A&M, and there's some normally like some hostility, but I'm gonna give Texas Tech some love because I love their guy Joey McGuire. If anyone knows me, they know I love me some Joey McGuire.
Go watch our
Um,
video on second year coaches. We talked about Joey McGuire and
quite a
how
bit.
excited we were months ago about him. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And here he is with Texas Tech with an over under win total of 7.5 in Joey McGuire's second year. How about that? Who would have thought? They were a very effective team offensively last year, and yet they played 3 different quarterbacks. How about that? And look, in the reality is too, like if you want to take the over, Tyler Shuck, 8-0 as a starter when he finishes the game. Baron Morton's played a lot of games. Sure, Donovan Smith transferred to Houston, but come on, they still got guys there, right? So like this is a team like if you're betting the over, they can get it there with Baron Morton or they can get it there with Tyler Shuck. I am very disappointed to inform the audience that I will not be taking the over. It was close. It was very, very, very close. Oregon in week 2 is tough. You get them at home, and I would not be surprised actually if they found a way to win that ball game there. But there's just a lot of toss-up games here, and there's also like the question of I get that they returned 4 of the 5 offensive linemen back that they had last year, but they weren't all that great last year. I know like the offensive metrics want to tell you that they were like that they were good on the offensive line, but the reality is that was probably like their biggest weakness on offense, which is a credit to Tyler Shuck playing as well as he did, especially in that Ole Miss game. He balled out. It was awesome. Things I like about Texas Tech, wide receiver room's awesome. It really is. And it starts and ends with Jaron Bradley, who is
the
a dog.
red shirt sophomore. Sorry.
Dog. And I did draft him in our CD and I's little fantasy competition wide receiver. He took Xavier Worthy. I took Jaron Bradley. A little sleeper-ish pick there, but gosh, he could be really, really, really talented. So, and he's not the only guy with size there in that room. So I'm a big fan of that. Baylor Cup is also stud at tight end. Um, so look, this could be a really good offense again. I think if the offensive line takes a step, it could be pretty dangerous. And the defense was like serviceable last year. They made big plays when they needed to. Very, very bend but don't breaky. Which is kind of the case there a lot of the times. It is tough that you lose a guy like Tyree Wilson, who was literally a top 10 pick. He's unbelievable. That guy could have been an Aggie. Bummer. But uh, Miles Cole is also like similar build. Not quite as built physically as Tyree Wilson, but I think they have a lot of hope there at edge with him as well. And Steve Lynn from Syracuse is getting a lot of hype there on the defensive line as well, which is weird because you wouldn't think. I don't know, Syracuse. They're not necessarily known for just churning out defensive linemen, but apparently people are pretty high. Oh, I think I got his name right, Steve Lynn. But
Yep.
yeah, but if they can improve defensively in the run game as well, like that could change games as well. Because and also too, what kind of scared me off this was one of the reasons I actually love Joey McGuire. He loves going for it on fourth down. He loves it. And he benefited greatly from that in the certain games, right? The Texas game, what was he, 6 for 8 on fourth down? Like, and that was a really early game in the year, right? Like so like the regression potential is there in terms of like that, the fourth down conversion percentage. And defensively, they're 19th in the country going for it on fourth down and 8th in the country defending it. Like, so it feels like that there could be some regression that comes there, and those, again, to the credit of Joey McGuire, having the stones and the gonads to call those plays.
As a
It
first year
could,
coach too.
as a
Jesus.
first year coach, going from high school football. Well, that may be where he gets it from, right? But I don't know. It just feels like that there could be some regression in that sense. Not to say that this program is headed in the right direction, 100%, 100%. And the secondary is going to be experienced, not necessarily all that talented. They were not great last year, but look, their linebackers are gone. But again, what do we talk about linebackers, especially at the college level? Replaceable, right? There's a couple that are
And
not.
they've looked good in camp too.
Yeah.
And the
So
linebackers there.
yeah. So I lean over. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, like Matthew said, I am disappointed that I'm not taking the over. I thought I was gonna. I was kind of ready to just auto hit over because of how high I am on this program and Joey McGuire. I think we're a year away, and because I went to look at the schedule, right, and it's not a brutal schedule, but Oregon out of conference is tough. You kind of have to chalk that up as a loss, even though it's at home. This seems like a team that I'm not gonna bet the over on in terms of like the futures bet, but week to week I'm gonna ride them. I think they're gonna
Yeah.
cover the spread in a ton of those
Oh
games,
yeah.
like Kansas State, maybe TCU, Oregon. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Baylor,
When they
if they're
go
not favoring that game, even at
when
Texas.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
I don't
I'm
know.
I'm with you.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun team. I'm sure we'll be watching them all year long. I think the tight end room is really interesting. I know it's a tight end room, and you don't really think about it, but the possibilities there, right? That Joe McGuire has with Baylor Cup, who seems like was a high school recruit forever ago. He still has eligibility there. He's a freak, honestly, and he's
Once an
really, really
Aggie,
talented.
once an
Always an
Aggie, always an
Aggie.
Aggie.
Yep. And another freak is Mason Tharp right behind him, who's got the measurables of an offensive tackle at 6'9", 270, has been super physical, finally put on the weight that he needed to be able to play at, Division One level. Uh, he's a third-year guy there. I again, the 12 personnel there with Taj Brooks in the backfield, super, super interesting with Jaron Bradley and then the big wide receivers. The possibilities that Texas Tech has, it's awesome. I think we're a year away, maybe 2 years away from kind of chalking up like these, most of the Big 12 games as wins for them. Like I really think they're going to be at that point pretty soon, especially if they keep Joey McGuire, on staff there. But again, like you said, I think losing Tyree Wilson, Reggie Pearson, pretty tough. Safety though, they're doing pretty good at safety. Like Dadrian Taylor Demerson has been a pretty good leader for him. He's got a good offseason. Tyler Owen sounds like he's finally putting it together. He's got elite size, speed, physicality there. And then at corner, they got some transfers they like. CJ Bakersfield transferred in there. Mike Dunlap, Rashad Williams, Braylon Lux, even at corner there for good depth. So we'll see. Like you said, I hope Steve Linton is one of my dark horse guys that in the Big 12 that I think is going to be really really productive. The question I do have is kind of at O line. Not that I question it. I don't think it's a huge strength for them. Caleb Rogers is pretty good at tackle. Jacoby Jackson, if he plays in the run blocking, is really damn good. But they're old offensive line, which is what you love to see. Especially in year 2 of a program, to have a veteran offensive line is such an advantage. I'm interested to see how Tyler Show. Is it Shuck? Was it Shuck?
Shuck. It's pronounced Shuck, and I was told that by Texas Tech fans in the comments. So thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. First of all, you're awesome for being Texas Tech fans. Lucky you guys. You have the privilege of being
Get
able
your
to support
guns
Joey
up.
McGuire. That's an awesome. I want to eventually get my way out to Lubbock. That atmosphere seems awesome, especially when they start winning more with Joey McGuire. I know it's crazy that we're talking all this great stuff about Texas Tech and none of us are taking the over, but I think this is going to be, kind of a bridge year into like a really like Texas Tech taking over the Big 12 of the future with all the recruiting potentials they have and Joe McGuire and running the state of Texas from the Big 12 perspective.
100%. UCF, another team, first year in the Big 12. Candidly, probably the team coming to the Big 12 that I'm most confident in this year, and it's not really that close, actually. Look, you return a lot. You get a lot of guys back, I think, on this team. There's a lot of guys back. The over-under win total is at 6.5. Of course, you get Boise State in the out-of-conference game.
At Boise State. It's got to go to
Yeah.
Boise, the blue turf.
Yeah, so it's not an easy game by any means, especially if they could be pretty good this year. We know how we feel about our guy Taylor Green over there, but uh this feels like a really manageable schedule to me. The over under win totals at 6.5. How are you feeling?
UCF is to be honest is the hardest team I have um to do this. I want to take the over so badly. I'm not gonna because I feel like I'm taking the over on too many Big 12 teams at this point. So I'm just gonna just stay off it. I would lean the over for sure, but I guess because I like John Rice Plumlee. I like Gus Malzahn's offense. I think they did a good job in the transfer portal, specifically in the offensive line. Amari Kite comes over from Alabama, is probably going to be the right tackle. Marcellus Marshall from Kent State has looked apart as a guy who had a ton of Power 5 offers, like he did. And then you got some uh Xavier Townsend there that's still there. Kobe Hudson, Javon Baker's been there for a couple years now. It seems like he's ready to be the guy, at UCF. I think this offense is super interesting. The defense, I got a little bit more question marks about, but I think there's some fun pieces there. Like the clay is all there to have a really successful season, kind of like how Texas A&M and Missouri came in the SEC and kind of lit fire right away. I think UCS is one of those teams that can do that for sure. But I'm not going to bet on it yet, so we'll see what they have to do this year.
Yeah, I'll tell you what drew me away from the over. I lean over, just for the record, and I do think UCF will be very, very successful in the Big 12 in years to come. They'll be very, very successful.
Yep.
I have 100% confidence in that. And I think John Rice Plumlee is a very good player. If anyone's a college baseball fan out there also, and if ever got a chance to see him play baseball, it is awesome. He's a very, very good athlete. You could see it out there. And also, of course, you can see it on the football field. It's ironic, though, he's a baseball player, and, maybe he doesn't throw the ball as well as some other
Well, because he's not a
quarterbacks.
pitcher; he's an outfielder, right?
Yeah,
Where
he's an
most of
outfielder.
your quarterbacks are pitchers.
Yeah, there's highlights of him, gunning guys down. I love it. But It's more about like the play style and Mikey Keene transferring out of there as his backup, right? He transfers out of there, he goes to Fresno State, which we love the staff over there, but uh, and I think he'll be really good over there. And he was a really, really good backup quarterback. And the problem is I don't know if they have anything behind right John Rice Plumlee and his play style, right? John Rice Plumlee, like he's very susceptible to getting hurt, right? Just with that play style. I know he's a really good athlete, and like sometimes like certain athletes like they fall certain ways or like they just move in certain ways or their body's just built where they can just take hits and they just very robust, right? And that is John Rice Plumlee, but uh I just think there's too much banking on John Rice Plumlee. Like if he gets hurt, like they can't win 7 games if he gets hurt. They I don't think they can do it, which is the biggest reason, right? And you talked about the defense having like some question marks as well. The wide receiver room, I don't think really matters against John Rice Plumlee. So like, it's not like if he had elite receivers, it's not like I don't know that he would be able to really take advantage of it. Anyways, sure, Ryan O'Keefe goes to Boston College, but uh, it's fine. I mean, Marcellus Marshall on the offensive line. They actually got some good transfers on the offensive line, which is pretty rare. I'm high on Marcellus Marshall, the all conference guy, G5 all conference. Like anytime you get an all conference guy, you're high on them, right? Especially like the offensive line, because a lot of that is like we talk about like linebackers, right? If you're picking an all conference linebacker, sometimes you can just stat shop. Not talking about any Georgia Tech linebackers at this point in time, but like or Amari Knight, from Alabama, or Kite. Sorry, totally mispronounced that. Sorry about that, guys. But and RJ Harvey at running back he's fine. Consider drafting him pretty late in my fantasy drafts that I had these past couple weeks, but I'm uh I'm okay with this team. This team is a very good team. I like Kent State and Villanova getting them out of conference. I like the Kent State tune-up game for Boise State. Yeah, and then I think the Big 12 schedule is pretty manageable, right? When you draw, you don't draw BYU, but that's fine. I mean, they're probably the second best team that's new to the conference. But you get Cincinnati, you got to go to Cincinnati though. You get Houston, you get West Virginia. See, you got a pretty decent draw, right? You get Kansas, who could be a win, could be a loss. So I just couldn't get myself to really bet on all of that. Beat writers, lovely Hunter, who you guys follow recruiting. He was a big D tackle. I believe he was at Auburn. Not super high motor guy, but apparently he's just cut some weight. It's looking good. He's got some upside up there. So if he gets that done, that defense could be pretty decent. DBs are fine. Brandon Adams is good. Did you talk about Decorian Patterson?
No, that's all you.
Yeah, so Middle Tennessee State, and you guys have probably never heard of him. But you go right in the stats, and you just filter by interceptions, right? You'll see his name at the top of the list. That's right. He had the most interceptions in college football last year. So clearly, an eye for the ball, right? I didn't get a chance to watch him actually too much, but all I know is that he goes and gets the ball, which leads me to believe that he could be a pretty decent corner for them. I don't think they would have gotten him if they didn't really believe that. So, but yeah, the main reason that I can't take it is because there's just nothing behind John Rice Plumlee and his play style. Just it makes me too nervous that he's going to get hurt, and they're not going to be able to win 7 games without him.
No, and they're also so the interesting part about UCF is Gus Malzahn's typically, has called plays a lot, but he hired Darren Hinshaw, right, from UAB to be the offensive
Yeah,
coordinator. He's gonna call plays. UAB ran the ball a lot. I mean, they had Dwayne McBride, yes. So of course you're gonna run the ball. They ran the ball a ton. They averaged 235 yards a game, 5.8 yards per carry. I mean, they Darren Hinshaw's a good play caller, really good offensive running schemes. But again, that's gonna be more impact for John Rice Plumlee because he's gonna be involved in the running game as well. Him, RJ Harvey, and then Demarcus Bowman as well. Like, change of pace back. High rated recruit from Florida and Clemson. He's kind of been everywhere in the Southeast now. Finally at UCF now. Seems to be playing well in camp. So yeah, I think that's super interesting. I think Darren Hinshaw got to look out for. I like when your head coaches don't necessarily call plays. That scares me sometimes. We saw Jimbo Fisher give it up. Steve Sarkisian's like the only one, and maybe Lane Kiffin. Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, the ones I kind of want calling plays because not many people are gonna be better than him, and they can still manage the game or hire people to do it for him, just like Steve Sarkisian did with Paul Chryst at Texas. But yeah, usually that leads to more wins, I think, with Gus Malzahn giving up play calling. Defensively, it's interesting, especially that secondary. You talked about a couple of those players, Corey Patterson, Brandon Adams. Nikhil Marshall was starting nickel last year. He's moving to safety to bring in room for Braden Marshall, who's a true freshman guy they're really, really high on. He's going to start at safety. He's true freshman All-American. I'm sure you've seen those the teams that they've got, like ESPN or 24/7, whoever else has done them. He's a guy everyone's really high on, including that staff there. John Walker was a big time recruiting win. He's going to give him nice depth this year behind, Lee Hunter, which I know you talked about earlier. Both those guys are really, really talented. We'll see how it does. I don't think they have a ton of depth, like you said, not only at the quarterback position, but kind of everywhere else. I don't know if I love them, to survive a whole conference schedule in the Power Five. But
Yeah.
the future of UCF is bright. Don't get me wrong. Very, very bright. You've seen it recruiting, right? You've seen it. Like they got the potential to really, really, be on the upper echelon of the new Big 12 coming in and be able to run, compete in the state of Florida for a lot of these good, talented players, which Gus Malzahn seems to be doing pretty well right now.
Yeah, and I will go back to your Henshaw argument as well. Like, it could be also used against me as well. Like, if they're running the ball a lot and running effectively, right, then there is a chance that the offense doesn't take a huge hit if John Rice Plumlee isn't in the game as well. So it still just makes me too nervous, right, to take the over. But I could definitely see people making that argument. And I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Look, I applaud people who have the gonads to take overs. I do. Our last team, West
Last but not least,
Virginia.
right? West Virginia, right? Neil Brown. Not last, not least. I don't know.
West
Sorry.
Virginia. Yeah. West Virginia. Sorry. I mean, last year, I'm going to say it. I get injuries. I get injuries. I get it. I get it. I get it. Y'all were lucky to win 5 games. All right. That is what. And look, I got burned because I took the over 5.5. I'll admit it. I did that. I fell for it. I fell for JT Daniels. I fell for Graham Harrell, right? Not doing that at Purdue this year. Falling for Graham
Well,
Harrell.
they should have won. They should have won that first week 1, right? Or not should have won, but they could have won that game. And that changed the whole season there.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, they got a new promotion at OC. Look, does Neil the storyline in the offseason too is like, is Neil Brown gonna hand over play calling? The answer is no. His job is on the line, right? Like he's not gonna be handing over anything, right? This team just screams like, I don't know what you want to call it, like wounded animal backed in a corner, right? Like this team screams like he is doing everything he can, Neil Brown, to save his job. And I'm not convinced it's gonna work. His over under total is at 4.5. Their schedule is brutal. It is brutal. And I'm gonna say I should be taking the under, but I didn't. Do I? I don't know. Maybe when you say your stuff, maybe I'll change my mind all of a sudden. But gosh, it really feels like that this could be a disaster season. They lost JT Daniels, they lost Bryce Ford Wheaton, Dante Stills. They did get a lot of transfers though, so the volatility there, right? Like they could have some dudes, but is Garrett Green a good quarterback at all? Right? Well, one, does he start? Right? I think he probably will, but is he a guy? I don't know. Like change every wide receiver position that you could possibly think of, right? And I guess the O line's back. That's pretty good. But like, how good were they last year? I don't know. They were okay. They're fine. It was actually probably one of their strengths, but they were hurt last year. A lot of them. So uh, tough to really like gauge how I feel about this team because of all the transfers. But also too, like I'm not sure a lot of these transfers are going to be impact. Like, I think he wanted them to be. Like, I think Neil Brown wanted them to be, but there's a good chance that a lot of these guys don't even start in spots that he thought that he had holes at. So when they lost 3 defensive linemen, yeah, sure, they got a lot of transfers there. It's kind of like a last resort, but it was like 3 or 4 transfers on the defensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that Charles Woods got hurt last year. Like he was going to be a guy, okay, but now he's gone. Davis Bellinger got hurt too, but I don't know. You had guys like Beanie Bishop. You know a little bit more about Beanie Bishop than I do. Anthony Wilson, they add as well at corner. Uh, Montre Miller, they also add a corner. I mean, so I don't know. I really want to take the under pretty bad because 4.5 just feels high. I'm sorry, West Virginia. I really am. I know your CJ Donaldson's your guy too, but we'll see.
Well, the reason why I took CJ Donaldson in our little fancy draft we did is because the O line, they kind of have a really damn good group. Right?
Yeah.
It's the best unit on the team. They go 7 deep that they actually like with. They do like, and I think CJ Donaldson with the quarterback that I don't like at all. Garrett Green and Nico Marjoli, whatever, and then even Sean Boyle, the freshman, he's not gonna play. But nobody else is. I mean, I don't like any of them, to be honest. The reason why I actually don't take the under because I like it's honestly because of that quarterback room, because I don't see the wheels falling off, because I think a team that's built that runs the ball and that plays good defense, which I think they're going to do, I think they have a chance to be in every game they're going to play in. Right. And if they get adequate quarterback play, week to week, every other week, they're going to win 5 games. So that's what scares me with taking the under. So I'm kind of leaning push, and wouldn't surprise me if they win 5 games. Now, is 5 games enough to save his job at Neil Brown? I don't know. I think you need 6, closer to 7. But with that schedule, I don't see it. Right, Penn State's not going to be a bloodbath week 1. Although they're breaking in Drew Allar, but at Penn State, there's no chance. Hosting Pitt, a nice rivalry game. Uh, I don't see it. So I don't know. I think that the overall roster isn't terrible. Like, I went into this fully ready to take the under. I've lost all faith in Neil Brown. Right, I'm ready to take the under. I think the wheels are going to fall off. It's going to be like Scott Frost, his last season at Nebraska. I mean, but I think the defensive back room is pretty damn good. Not damn good. I think it's pretty good. Right, Anthony Wilson is pretty good. Seems to be a hit in the transfer portal for them. Beanie Bishop, I know what he can do. I know the floor he gives you in that room. So anyone better than him that plays is pretty good too. He's an experienced guy. Linebacking position, they don't love, but again, there's some older people in that room. So what can you really do about linebacker? The D line, it's a deep group, right? They brought in 3 transfers. They probably won't play a ton, but it's bodies that they have depth. So it's not like they're gonna be just, gonna be decimated by injuries. And it's really gonna fall off the wheels. I don't know. The wide receiver room is interesting. Devin Carter seems like a hit so far. Rodney Gallagher is a really interesting true freshman to watch. I think they're gonna get the ball in his hands and he's gonna make plays. Yeah, I don't know. I'm I wouldn't say I'm optimistic on West Virginia. I'm just cautiously pessimistic, if that makes sense. I'm cautious to be pessimistic.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit more pessimistic on this team than you. I'll say that like look, if Neil Brown gets fired pretty early, right? Some teams get better when they fire their coach. Georgia Tech was an example last year. I mean, you fire Jeff Collins and bring in Brent Key, and he goes 4-4. Like that's pretty wild. So like because also the effect of Neil Brown too, you fire him and then you get a new play caller in there and might rejuvenate the offense a little bit, in that way. So that's also a reason why I'm kind of scared off of it a little bit. But I don't know. I see the wheels falling off, but I don't know. I can't do it. I probably should. I don't know. I have till Saturday to figure that out. But officially for this show, I will not be taking the under on West Virginia. let's talk about awards. Uh, let's just get into it. How about it? I can go first. For all of these. I'll give my pick for Big 12 Player of the Year. It's chalk. I get it. It hurts me to say it's Quinn Ewers. All right, that's my Big 12 Player of the Year. It's gonna get improvement, right? I see Texas winning a lot of games this year. He's got a ridiculous offense around him, like ridiculous. And Steve Sarkisian. Like if he doesn't win Big 12 Player of the Year, I think it's like not a
Almost
letdown because
disappointing. No, it almost
yeah,
is.
it almost is. So that's my pick. I don't know. Is that yours?
I so I was gonna go Quinn Ewers. I'll give you another name that should win it. It's Cooper Beebe. I'm sorry. I think he's so good. He's an offensive lineman. I know he's not gonna win it, but he is the best. He is the best player in the conference, I think. If you want to have a dark horse, because I'm not gonna say Quinn Ewers, I'm gonna go Khalid Duke. I'm gonna continue to ride the Kansas State thing. I know, the defensive players don't always win the Big 12 Player of the Year. I cannot stress how high I am on Khalid Duke and Kansas State. At Kansas State, I'm not super high on Kansas State, but I am high on Khalid Duke. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, I can see those. If you were to put a gun to my head and say, "Hey, pick another one," for me, it'd probably be, yeah, I'm gonna go quarterback here, but give me Tyler Shuck. Give me Ty-
Oh,
Give me Tyler Shuck.
wouldn't that be something?
That would be something, which means that would mean that Texas Tech is probably making their way to the Big 12 championship, which would be awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
that's more of a hopeful pick. Yeah. So Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. I'm gonna go with Jalen Daniels. I think he's just gonna put up numbers. I mean, he was on a Heisman like campaign before he got hurt last year. Separated his shoulder. Kind of came back maybe a little earlier than he should have, and you kind of saw it in his game a little bit. But then you give him a couple weeks to heal up for the Arkansas game, and I mean, we saw what he did in that game. Didn't win that game, but holy cow! And I know he got hurt late, and Jason Bean came in, but he was fantastic in that game. It feels
Got
like
to stay
every game that
healthy.
he is healthy, he's fantastic, and he returns everyone on offense as well. So my Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. We can't just win 4 games, and he could still win Offensive Player of the Year because of that how terrible that defense is. So I'll give Jalen Daniels Offensive Player of the Year.
That was my pick. I think another guy to look out for would be Jaron Bradley, right, from Texas Tech. We talked about, and there's a reason why you took him in your fantasy draft. It's because of the numbers he's going to put up in that offense. I know there's some other interesting playmakers around him, but he is the focal point of that offense, especially the passing game of that offense. And he's got the possibility to put up monster numbers that would put him in contention for Offensive Player of the Year type category or type award.
Absolutely. Defensive Player of the Year. Feed me the Dante Corleone. Feed me him. He's fantastic. He's on my draft board. I think he's definitely top 15 on my NFL draft board. If you were to give me a pen and paper and make me write one out today without watching,
Mm-hmm.
300 players films yet. But yeah, he's a stud. He's a stud. You're gonna see it. What's crazy though is like for all of these defensive player of the years, for every conference that we've done so far, I've picked defensive lineman. I think in every one. So uh, I'm just gonna continue that trend. Give me Dante Corleone.
Yeah, I'd say Khalid Duke just because continue to ride that train. But I'm gonna give you another name just to look out for. Billy Bowman. We talked about him at Oklahoma. Might be the best player on that team. Period. He's a safety there. He's super super good. I think he's gonna fly around in that this new Brent Venables year 2 defense, and I think he's gonna make a lot of plays. Gonna make himself a lot of money in the NFL as well.
Yeah, I agree. Big 12 newcomer of the year. We were kind of talking about this before the show that the Big 12 newcomer of the year was hard for me because there's a lot of transfers coming to the Big 12, but it feels like there aren't a ton of like super standouts to me. So I'm not gonna say this is a sleeper, but feed me Trayshawn Ward for Kansas State running back. as Big 12 newcomer of the year. That offensive line is all back. It's all back. Will Howard's there. I think Trayshawn Ward could eat. I know Deuce Vaughn was a big loss. Everyone talks about the loss that Deuce Vaughn was, but I don't think people are talking enough about how good Trayshawn Ward is. He's a very, very, very good football player, and if he stays healthy, I think he could definitely snipe Big 12 newcomer of the year for sure. I think he's that good.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's really interesting. Um, like we said, the Big 12 newcomers, a lot of them. I couldn't pick any transfers because I just couldn't pick any of them. So I decided to go a little bit unorthodox. And I'm gonna go with that true freshman preferred walk on Drew Surges. I think he's gonna, win, the storyline behind it, and he'll get that award because he is, preferred walk on type guy. He's been balling in camp. We talked about him earlier. Might start at star position week 1, but definitely by the end of the year. It's an awesome story. I think he's gonna be a really good player. Won't be on, a walk on for long. Eventually he'll be on scholarship pretty soon here. But he's been balling out. And that's my pick. That's the storyline I'm watching in the Big 12 this year in terms of just feel good, guy to root for, and Drew Surges.
If you call that, we'll play this clip again, and that'd be insane. That would be ridiculous. I would not have even thought of that, by the way, that Drew Surges. But that'd be a crazy call. No, I'm rooting for him
Mm-hmm.
too. I'm rooting for him too. Big 12 coach of the year. Um, and we go with the guy who's won it before. Not last year, but he's won it before. Give me Mike Gundy. Give me Mike Gundy
Oh,
to win Big 12 Coach of the Year. If he squeaks by that schedule and he wins, say, 6 games in the Big 12 with that schedule, we could go back. It's not a ridiculously hard schedule. Plus, you get Oklahoma at home. You sneak a win there at Stillwater against Oklahoma, you could be seeing. I would not be surprised. Yeah, it could be Mike Gundy. Is what I'm saying. I thought Steve Sarkisian was a little too chalky, but I think if both of those guys make it to the Big 12 championship, I think it should be Mike Gundy, you know. But I think the
oh
media
yeah,
would vote for Steve Sarkisian because he brought Texas back. That would be really disappointing. I think Mike Gundy is a dog.
yeah. It's Sarkeesian and Brent Venables were my picks just because they're the obvious, teams to go to the Big 12 championship. I took the over on both those teams, so obviously I'm very high on those coaches there. Um, the person I'm watching up for again, I believe he's won one before as well. Dave Aranda at Baylor. I think he won it a couple years
Wow.
ago. Again, like I said, I'm pretty high on them. I told you I took the over on them. We'll talk about conference winners soon here, so I'm not done talking about Baylor yet. Just so you know, in terms of dark horses to win the conference, but I think Dave Aranda, that schedule, he's gonna earn it. He's gonna earn that conference champion. He's gonna earn Big 12 Coach of the Year if he does get it. Based on who they have to play out of conference and then even in conference as well.
Here it is. Who are our picks? Conference winner and a dark horse. Try to say that I did sprinkle money on my dark horse, but I did not sprinkle money on my conference winner. Conference winner. My conference winner is Texas. They're at even money. Just take them like I don't know. Just take them
Take
to
the
win.
over on their win total instead,
Yeah. Just take the over
because
on the
then they
win
don't have to win
total.
the conference championship. You're betting on a whole season and then to win one game where someone could get hot or Quinn Ewers could get hurt. Even though I think
Yeah,
Blake Murphy's fine, but
and
like
and you can't
you
even
never know.
hedge. Well, you could technically hedge, but if they're favored in that game, I guess you could barely hedge and scrape out a couple cents per dollar that you bet. But yeah, it's just not a good bet to bet Texas there. I mean, if you maybe I don't know, maybe if you got them earlier, I guess probably the lines were or odds were a little bit better, but not worth it to me. Not worth it to me. Who's your pick?
Texas, easy.
Yeah, it's easy. And again, you're looking at two guys that are not traditionally high on Texas, so
Nope.
don't look at us like just another media bozos picking Texas to win the conference again. But come on, like I think we can all admit that This is a different team, different coach, different culture, right?
Yep.
Different Big 12 too. Very different Big 12. So dark horse, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Give me Oklahoma State at plus 4,000. Is that 40-1 odds that I'm seeing on DraftKings? Yes, it is, because guess what? With that tasty schedule, look, even if they don't win the whole thing, a tasty, yummy hedge might be coming
You
late in
love
this
your
season.
futures and then a hedge, man. You love
I
it.
I love a juicy, juicy hedge in on the future. Like that's a big future. I don't think I've ever. Nah, I've hit some pretty crazy ones, but 4,000 would be up there in my plus 4,000 would be up there in my Mount Rushmore probably things that I've hit. But
Well,
yeah,
if you
and
look at the Big 12 historically, at least the past like 2, 3 years, it's been your Oklahoma States have been right there with Baylor a couple years ago. Iowa State was in the championship. Last year was Kansas State and TCU, two teams that everyone people were sneakily high on Kansas State, but TCU had a low win total as well. It's not out of the realm of possibilities for a team like Oklahoma State, to be in that conference championship game at all.
yeah, and we're gonna do a little exercise right here. I want you to guess how many teams have better odds to win. So you know, like teams. So Oklahoma State's plus 4,000, right? And I'll give you one. West Virginia's plus 15,000, right? How many teams have a
Worse
longer
odds,
shot?
basically.
Yeah, better odds in the sense where you make more money, but also like worse odds in the sense where they're. I want you to guess how many teams in the Big 12 there are that are worse
Let
Oklahoma
me
odds
just name
wise.
them. I'd go. I mean, probably BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, easily Iowa State 4, Kansas 5. Not UCF. I'm gonna go those 5. 5 out of
Uh,
14.
yeah. Well, you're missing one, but yeah, it is five. But Kansas is actually has better odds in the market than Oklahoma State does to win it. Which is crazy to me. Um,
Mhm.
and they're right behind UCF as well. Then there's a big jump to another team that I think will be your dark horse team to win the Big 12. But go ahead.
I'm thinking Baylor. I think Baylor, like we
Yep.
said, earlier, my dark horse to win Coach of the Year is Dave Aranda. I'm taking the over already on Baylor. 7 wins total. I think with the way it works out, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the Big 12 championship, and it would be a rematch against probably Texas, who they played in week 4 early in the season. And regardless of whatever happens in that game, it's hard to beat the team twice. And if you're Texas, who already beat Baylor, I think it's going to be a much different team. Week 13, week 14 conference championships of that Baylor is that versus they were in week 4. And obviously, most teams get better by the end of the year, whatever it is. But I think the way Dave Aranda is going to be instilling his new defense, his athletes in there, I think this is a really exciting year for Baylor and Dave Aranda. I think he's going to be able to do what he wants, and that's going to pay out big dividends to their team and also to me, right? For some future.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, DraftKings, you can get Baylor at plus 1,800. FanDuel is actually the best odds. You can get them at plus 1,900 to win the Big 12. If you were looking to bet that. And it's crazy enough, it's on DraftKings, TCU is plus 1,600 and Baylor's plus 1,800. But on FanDuel, Baylor's plus 1,900, TCU's plus 2,100. So FanDuel is actually
Oh,
higher on Baylor than TCU even.
yeah.
So I don't think you're alone in thinking that Baylor could be pretty decent. But then there's a big gap between them. It's like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State odds wise. Then Texas is like own tier, like with plus 1,000. And then you go into Baylor, TCU. They're another next tier. And then you get into the tier of UCF, Oklahoma State, Kansas, those guys. And then everyone else is just a poop shoot, like plus like 70,000, 7,000 or greater, or 8,000 or greater. So, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that dark horse. I like that dark horse pick. Even though I was leaning under on them, I could see a situation. Look, David Randa makes magic. Mike Gundy makes magic.
Exactly.
So or we just you're not taking a dark horse if you don't know that we're taking dark horse because we know that these guys make magic. Gosh, let's ride some Cowboys this year, baby. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft. Email us any questions you got. Some mailbag questions. Though we haven't gotten to a ton of those. But there are a couple in the queue, right? Not a ton in the queue, but there are a couple. And if you want to get in line, be sure to hop on, send us an email. We love reading those. Tweet at us. I read every single one. So you love me, you hate me, I'll see it. So thanks again. Any last thoughts?
No, just inching away closer to football, especially Big 12 football. It's a great conference this year. Historic conference or historic year for the Big 12. Gonna be really excited to see what happens with the new teams coming in, the teams leaving, other teams coming back in. Regardless, there's a lot of good coaches, a lot of good quarterbacks, personalities, especially with the coaches. You gotta love the Big 12.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.